That one I know. But I didn't know the others.
Good morning, and welcome to the work session and agenda setting session for the Board of County Commissioners for January 14, 2020. I'm John Hutchings, and to my left is
Gary Edwards.
to my right is
Ty Menser.
and bounce back and forth.
Robin Courts. Robin Campbell.
Ramiro Chavez.
Robin, and don't forget your microphone.
Oh, yes, thank you. Allison Cooper. Lovely Beaumont.
And our backbone,
Katie Johnson.
Nancy. Thank you all for being here. We're going to go through the homeless strategies, the BoCC draft agenda for this afternoon, the BOH Board of Health agenda for this afternoon, and then the whole host of things on the agenda list. So we'll start with Keely Marino with Homeless Strategies Update.
Great.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Keely Marino with Public Health Social Services. So today I just thought I'd focus a little bit on the Hazardous Weather Task Force and the events that are in the planning that we've gone through to prepare for this week's cold weather. Last week we started planning for a cold weather event or a hazardous weather event starting last night and lasting until the morning of the 17th on Friday. We worked together with Meg Martin from Interfaith Works to provide extra staffing at the Salvation Army shelter. Meg Martin and I met with Captain Mark Stearns down at Salvation Army and kind of got the lowdown on how things work there and figured out how many staff members they may need. Meg Martin and I, through the Interfaith Works calendar, she has a calendar for volunteers on her site, so we work together to offer volunteer opportunities, and pretty much all of the volunteer shifts have already been filled. Those volunteer shifts are for, it's
Good.
excellent. We have a great community. 6:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights to help out at the shelter, and then shifts in the morning from 6 to 7:30 to help with cleanup. And I think pretty much all of the shifts have been covered, which is excellent. Meg Martin has got staff for the rest of the week to help support Salvation Army. Salvation Army was able to pull together 2 extra staff for last night. At 9 p.m. when Captain Mark Stearns left, there were 50 people. Now, 29 is where they keep their cold weather beds on a regular cold weather night. But they were at 50 by 9 p.m. and we're waiting to hear numbers of how far it went beyond 50. I haven't heard final tallies yet from either Union Gospel Mission, CYS, Family Support Center, or Salvation Army. It's still pretty early for them to give me numbers. But as soon as I have them, I'll definitely am happy to let anyone know what those are. Similarly, Partners in Prevention Education, who holds our contract for sheltering in place activities, rallied over the weekend to purchase survival gear, and on Monday had arranged for outreach crews to go out into about 6 encampments. And so between Partners in Prevention Education and some other outreach workers through Capital Recovery Center and Just Housing Olympia, they were able to go to each of the about 6 camps and distribute survival gear. I also heard from Deb Larson, who is a member of Love Abounds here in Yelm, and she reached out to me to see if she could get some survival gear for folks up in Yelm. They only have a small room at the police station where people can sleep on really cold nights, and so there are many people out in Yelm that don't have any survival gear and they're sleeping outside. So she's on her way into Olympia to gather more survival gear to make sure that those residents that are sleeping outside in Yelm have something warm to keep them safe at night. So that's kind of where we're at with the hazardous weather event. I don't believe we'll be extending it. It looks like it's going to be pretty over by Friday, but you never know. We thought it was only going to be 3 days last year in February, so.
But that shows the character of Thurston County with a number of people volunteering to show up right away to provide service to other people.
Yes.
People that are deserving of our help and assistance. That's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Questions or comments? Even Yelm.
Yeah.
What does your survival gear consist of?
So that looks like tarps, socks, hand warmers, hats, gloves, blankets, sometimes water, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
You mentioned, I can't remember the group, but the contract for sheltering in place.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? What's the scope of that? I mean, how much money is that? How many days can they go out and camps can they serve? And, what's the scope of what we've contracted for?
Sure. So Partners in Prevention Education were contracted for $15,000 to provide shelter-in-place activities throughout the year. So starting in September, on September 1, they were contracted to provide sheltering-in-place activities. This is our first round of sheltering-in-place activities, I believe. And so what that looks like is there's a little bit of admin for prep and for planning and for gathering volunteers through their staff members, and the rest is purchasing supplies, storing supplies, and distributing supplies. So the ways that they are saving money or cutting costs for the actual distribution is they're using outreach workers that are already doing routes through the camps on a weekly basis. So just utilizing what's already available to just get those goods out to them. Last year, we used volunteers to distribute nightly supplies to all the encampments in February. I've had a brief conversation with Micah Semro, who's the coordinator of the shelter-in-place activities last night. And I don't know if they're going to have a second round of survival gear going out, but the bulk of the survival gear went out last night. I assume that it will be ongoing, but.
Is this contract one of the ones from our process of I forget which one. There's like, through the HHSC, there's like 2 or 3 different, matrices I sat in on this. Is it one of the contracts that came through the homeless services, process that we have?
Yes, so we have a $200,000 set aside for cold weather shelter, and then we had a $50,000 set aside for emergency shelter for hazardous weather. From that $50,000, we contracted with Partners in Prevention Education $15,000 for the shelter-in-place activities and $10,000 to Interfaith Works to provide extra staffing during hazardous weather events. The remaining $25,000 is for hazardous weather events beyond what we've contracted. So if for some reason we have
February, March, yeah.
Yeah, we get into some more nasty weather in February or March, then we'll still have those in reserves. If Meg Martin has to staff to beyond the $10,000 that she's contracted, there's still money available. So that's what that's for.
Thank you.
Anything else? Nothing? Keely, thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you very much. Press on. We're going to move to review the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for this afternoon, January 14, 2020. And we'll call the meeting to order at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Edwards. And then approval of the agenda and the meeting minutes from January 7. And then we go right into presentations. The first one is Proclamation for Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. Before we get into the agenda, if I may, you will notice on this agenda that we do not have an agenda for next Tuesday, which is February 21st. That's a day after the holiday. So the Board of County Commissioners meeting for next week has been canceled.
Correct. Thank you for that. That's January, is it 14th?
21st.
I mean, the 21st.
The 21st.
Good night. Thank you.
But
Sure we
we
get that.
do, however, have our agenda setting meeting on the 21st to review the agenda of the 28th.
Got
So
it.
the morning session is still on.
Okay. So the first proclamation this afternoon is for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Yes, Commissioners, for your consideration is to proclaim January 20th, 2020 as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Day Jr. In Thurston County. We have 2 guests that will be attending this afternoon. That will be Bishop Lorenzo Peterson from the New Life Baptist Church, and he will be coming along with Ms. Thelma Jackson. And that will give you the opportunity to express your thoughts related to this proclamation.
Perfect. Okay. Anything? Any comments? Good. And then proclamation in recognition of Home's first 30th anniversary.
Yeah, also for your consideration is to have a proclamation recognizing 30 years of the Home First organization. The Executive Director, Trudy Sukup, thank you, will be in attendance, and she will also be providing a few words for the board. And again, that will give you the opportunity to celebrate 30 successful years, I believe, from my perspective, of this organization.
Anything? All right, and then introduction of a new Public Works solid waste manager.
Yeah, Jennifer Walker, your Public Works Director, will be introducing the new solid waste manager. That will be Mr. Mark McElroy. And Megan, that will give you the opportunity to welcome it into the county workforce.
That's a welcome sight. Yeah.
Good.
And then we move into the opportunity for the public to address the board.
Yes, I had some, and later on the agenda on the public testimony, we can elaborate a little bit more on this. We just received a letter from Mr. Pettit where he will be testifying this afternoon. And again, maybe later on the agenda, we can walk in more detail as to what his testimony is going to be. And also, yeah, that's all I think I know for now in terms of public testimony.
Okay, anything?
I raised the issue in a conversation with Ramiro, and I'm just turned into the chair because I don't envy your position, but this line about electioneering and public comment it's not crystal clear in my head.
Uh-huh.
You know, if it's just coming in and saying, you know, vote no or vote yes, okay, well that's pretty clear. But if it's, you know, you don't have to say those words, but you can come in, you know, if it's a candidate, let's say it was, you know, Biden and Sanders, you could come in and just talk about all the terrible things about Bernie Sanders or all the terrible things about Joe Biden, you know, about candidates. And the courthouse election it's another ballot measure. It falls, as my understanding is, it falls under the same rules as a personal candidate.
That is correct.
So if you couldn't get up there and say that, you know, Cheryl Selby's been a terrible mayor over the last, you wouldn't have to say vote against her, but you could just say, this is a terrible mayor. She's done this, she's done that. She hasn't stood, or she's a great mayor, whatever. Not, you know, I don't see it's your job, not mine, thankfully, but I don't understand the difference between coming in and saying, spending a lot of money on a courthouse is a great idea, we should do that, or it's a terrible idea. Without saying the words vote yes or vote no, you're still electioneering for something that's on the ballot. So I'm not sure how we're gonna, that just came up at the last meeting and I never thought about it and it got my head turning. I'm not sure how we've had a lot of public comment over the last year about the courthouse and I would assume we're gonna continue to get it. So I'm just kind of raising it for a conversation. What's permitted and what's not permitted? Because I don't actually know.
Well, I really feel for you that you're turning to me for that answer. Because that's that fine line we've discussed before regarding electioneering and or limiting someone's what they say and freedom of speech.
Sure.
And so that begs the question from Elizabeth Petridge regarding what we can or can't control. But if, for example, if we are negating or denying someone the bully pulpit for public comment on saying it's a good or bad idea, that limits our saying the same thing. And then at what point is it not saying vote yes or vote no, but just giving their opposition to it? Is that electioneering? I'm thinking it is, but I don't know.
Is there some law about this, or is this our internal rule that we say we're just not going to entertain public comment on ballot measures or election stuff?
And I can probably go back on initial conversations. We can certainly check back with prosecuting attorney. But electioneers, when they make a positive and a firm comment related to a particular measure or candidate, like you stated, vote yes or vote no, that is clearly electioneering. Because it is extremely difficult to say, comments related to a specific item can be considered electioneering. So how you balance in terms of the opportunity for the public to address the board. But I think the direct assertion of a yes or no, that at least from my point of view, is considered electioneering. What I can do this afternoon is clarify what that really is. The affirmative comments for or against a measure or a candidate may not be permitted.
And just to be clear, I'm not trying to sway this any one direction. I guess because I'm the vice chair this year, I'm imagining if you were gone and it was my responsibility, I just want to make sure I follow the law and the rules. So I'm just trying to get clarity about it. I'd certainly, I mean, if not trying to limit anyone's comment about anything, courthouse or otherwise.
Go ahead.
I echo those same concerns. And for one, I don't want to limit anybody's free speech. And I guess the main question that you asked is there some kind of a law that says this, or is this our own interpretation of what we should be expecting from the public or allowing the public to do? And I want to err on allowing free speech. That's kind of where I'm coming from on the issue. And so I don't know where the breakdown is. I would like to know, is there a law that says this? Or is it up to the board chair? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I've never thought much about limiting speech. I know on occasion we've asked individuals not to comment on issues that this board might rule on as a quasi-judicial board. But anything else, almost to me, is fair game. But even that one, I'm curious about the legality now.
Well, the electioneering prohibits any public employee or anybody who uses public facilities to support or against any particular measure. So that is at least my understanding of electioneering law.
There's a law that you can't whatever electioneering is defined as, you can't do it within X number of feet of like a ballot box, for example.
Yeah,
like,
Or the day
I had
before.
I had a sign that was like down the street, and
But
somebody's like, make sure it's
is
not.
within a certain period leading
Of
to
the
an election.
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 A period of time.
30 days,
And
yeah.
in this case, because we have the others is a voting center, that applies. And we have exercised that in the past. And I usually send an email to all the county employees stating what the rule is. But even within, the electioneering clearly leading to an election is difficult. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, we can probably side on the side of caution to give the public, as much ample opportunity to provide their comments to you. But when the comments are directly supporting or not in a specific measure, or exercising a vote yes or vote no, then from my perspective, it's clearly electioneering.
And I'm sorry, we finished?
But
Go ahead,
I will check with your attorney.
please. Because what I'm hearing is electioneering. I don't know what the intent was, but it seems like the intent was to limit the government or its employees from electioneering, but not so much the public and free speech. And even from someone who is a self-proclaimed, I am the most significant person in opposition, which I dispute. I don't know if we can limit that or not. And certainly for an expectation to have someone ask a question and get the answer in the same day is unreasonable. But I'd like to hear from our legal opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our legal attorney, yeah.
And I guess so the public can have a good understanding of this, I would like to have a written opinion from our legal folks and possibly a verbal explanation at a board meeting.
Yeah. So
I'm okay with that, yeah.
until that time, I will not state this afternoon at the board meeting about electioneering
Depending
until
on
we
what
get
you
a
find out.
clarification.
Yeah, depending on what you find out from the prosecutor.
Yeah, I don't know if I can get that answer for this afternoon, though.
It's not reasonable to expect that in a day. I just said that,
No,
yeah.
it's fine.
Thank you, Romero. Now, good question, though.
Well,
It's that fine line of free speech
I'm not
and
su-
opening the comment period up, too.
if it's cut and dried in writing somewhere, we're not, I'm not an attorney to make that determination. I don't know that it's unreasonable to have that answer and, refer to RCW 1234.
For this afternoon?
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I wouldn't mind
if they're
asking
available.
questions. I mean, if it's going to come up,
Well, I don't want to commit, so let me touch
No,
base
but
with our attorney.
take a stab at it, see if, I hate to see the bureaucratic process take over on this.
Well,
Such a
you know,
simple question.
we're busy until noon today.
Yes.
So give me
You
some
are.
time to reach out to
Yeah.
our attorney, have a conversation with Elizabeth.
And I have no doubt you'll make every attempt. All right, county manager's update. Have you anything?
I will follow up on a couple public testimony that you received last week. And again, I will address those during your public testimony agenda number 5 today.
All right, wow. I'm looking at agenda item number 3, consent items A through Q. That's almost the whole thing.
Yes, the first item for your consideration, 3A, is the treasurer has requested for the board to authorize a direct negotiation for a tax title property. I believe I shared this with you. This property is just about 0.02 acres. The cost of the property is $150, and with fees and everything else, the total sale price is $413. And it was a companion property last week that the board asked me to follow up on additional information. That is still, I'm still working on that. So for your consideration is just to authorize the treasurer to enter into a private negotiation. Because of the foreclosure auction, they did not receive any bids on that.
Anything? Anything? No. All right, thank you. 3B, the treasurer.
This is also a request from the treasurer's office, and this particular request is for you to approve a proposal for to change the accounting assistant 2 position to an accounting assistant 3. And this is an ongoing need of the high level of support the treasurer's office needs. And at this point, the accounting assistant 3 position is the one who probably has the more adequate discretion of the duties the treasurer's office needs. This particular action will result on an increase from $4,768 a month to $5,257 a month. That will be an increase of $489 a month, or 10% increase. At this point, the treasurer is not asking for an additional budget, and they will be absorbing this impact if the board approves the request.
All right, anything? Go ahead.
Just a question, even though we're not going to make any budgetary adjustments for this year, and that'll be taken care of internally, that means, though, that next year, that'll have to be into the budget consideration process. Is that right?
It could be. And the numbers that I give you is the top range of those positions. That individual who is holding those positions may not be reaching the high end of that position maybe in 2-3 years down the road. So at this point, it's difficult. It could be, but not necessarily to the full extent.
So this is just approving the top range of the step.
Yeah, it's just changing. What I give you is just the impact on the top range.
Okay.
Because at this point, I don't know if that individual who's holding that position, at what step that person is at. Yeah.
Okay. Good question. Anything? Nope. 3C, Public Health and Social Services.
Yeah, this is one of the first of 3 position control requests for your consideration from Public Health and Social Services. This particular item is related to the community health nurses. The department is asking to establish 2 temporary positions with an end date of June 30th, 2021. The reason that we have the June 30, 2021, that is when the current grant that you authorized last week to provide services to Lewis County and lapses on June 30, 2021. So we're aligning, creating those 2 positions to the availability of that grant. There may be an opportunity that perhaps that grant will continue on. If that is the case, we should know at the beginning of early 2021, and in fact, we're going to have additional money through this grant, and at that point, we'll bring another item for you to consider extending that position based on the new information of the new grant.
Okay. All right, anything? Good, thank you. 3D, Delta. Public health.
Yeah, this is also related to, for you to consider creating a temporary position with an end date of June 30th, 2021. And this is also grant funded related from the Healthcare Authority, a Community Prevention and Wellness Initiative. And this is to provide informational and training to the Bucota Tenino Healthy Action Team, and concentrated mainly on the duties of tobacco, vaping, and opioids prevention. And again, this position is a 0.6 FTE, and the top range of this position is $3,739.20. And again, this is funded by a grant.
Anything?
Good.
All right. 3E, PHSS.
This is also a request from Public Health and Social Services, and this is a little bit different. And this is to remove the end date of Accounting Assistant 2 in the department. As part of the, you approving the 2020 budget, you include the additional revenues and expenditures related to removing the end date of this position. However, we missed to include in the position control ordinance. Do you also approve during the budget approval process? So this is just aligns to the expenditures because it was the intent. You heard this item, and it was your intent to fund the expenditures, remove the end date. This is just administrative action to remove the end date officially.
All right. Okay. 3F, IT.
You also review this item, and this is related to the reorganization that has been taking place for the last year or so, where we separated IT from central services to become their own department. And during that process, there's a lot of individual funds that needs to be also transferred to the specific departments. So for your consideration is to transfer Fund 5240, that's the large system replacement reserve, from central services to information technology. It's an administrative change in terms of changing the actual fund number.
What kind of money are we talking about?
I don't have at this point but I can give you the number if you like later
I
on.
don't know if it would, how significant it was.
Do you know how much money we have on this fund? No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. 3G, CPED.
For your consideration, following the board's discussion last week, is for you to consider approving Ms. Grace Edwards to the Thurston County Historic Commission, representing District 3, and with a term that will be expiring May 30th, 2023. You may recall that Ms. Edwards has submitted a couple of applications. She was interested in a couple of boards. You requested for staff to reach out to Ms. Edwards and ask her if she's interested in serving in 2 boards. And she said she has the time and the energy to do so. So you will see another item for her to be appointed to another board as well.
Bless her heart. Okay. Anything?
Just that no relation.
No relation?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, Robin.
If I may go back, I just happen to have the financial plan for the large system replacement reserve right here. And at the end of 2018, the ending fund balance was approximately $1.2 million. We've made some purchases in 2019. The anticipated fund balance at this time is about $600,000. but we collect every year. We'll be talking more about this fund, which is why I have it with me, but right now it's under $1 million.
Okay, thank you. Uh, 3H, CPED.
Yeah, also for your consideration is to appoint Ms. Grace Edwards as the Commission District 3 member for the Thurston County Fair Board. And this term will go from January 14, 2020 through January 14, 2024.
Bless her heart, that's great. Anything?
Nope.
On that? Nope, okay. 3I.
You also provided direction to bring this item for your consideration to appoint Ms. Megan Payne
Oh, yeah.
to the Tourism Promotion Area Hotel and Motel Commission. And this term will be from January 20th, January 2020 to December 2022. That will be maybe early January and the end of December.
And she will be a welcome addition to the TPA. Anything? Good? Anything? Okay.
No.
3J, Central Services.
Commissioners, for your consideration is to extend the lease of an office building located in 807 West Railroad Avenue in Shelton, Washington. And this is to provide a space for the Nurse Family Partnership Program when they provide services in Mason County to meet with the clients. The rent at this point is $25 a month for a total of $300 annually, and this rate also includes utilities.
What a deal. Oh my gosh.
When I was reading the numbers, I was
That's
like,
great. Anything?
Hard to complain about.
Anything else? That's wonderful.
oh, you have another lease extension. That's a little
Oh,
bit different
good.
here. Yeah.
3K, Kilo.
Yeah, this is another lease extension, and this is related to the auditor's office. It has the election division located in Mudman Center at 2905 29th Avenue Southwest in Tumwater. They lease just about 17,000 square feet. The lease will be expiring in March 31st, 2020. And the request is for you to consider extending the lease to December 31st, 2024, almost a 4-year lease. Just about the 17,000 square feet, it will cost an annual rent lease of $89,064. That will be just about $7,422 a month. It also has an adjustment after the first year related to the CPI, so there's also an incremental increase on the lease. This lease does not include utilities. And in the past, we expect in 2020, the total cost of utilities will be just about $5,000. This is already included on the 2020 budget, and staff is requesting for you to consider extending this lease for 4 years.
Anything?
Should we call the Community Action Council, see if they have any extra space?
Oh,
I have a question. Take me back.
I'll take you back, Commissioner.
Should the ballot measure on the courthouse be approved, does the auditor in toto move into that new facility and we would not be spending the money on this lease program anymore, the lease building?
The 4-year lease, I think that will be probably a good point in which if the ballot measure passes, construction, moving, and everything else will give enough time. But I believe the lease also includes termination clauses. They will
Okay.
allow you to terminate the lease at any time.
So it's $90,000 a year then would eventually not be spent?
Correct.
Okay. And the auditor would have sufficient space at the new facility?
That is the plan.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's not electioneering, I just needed to know. Thank you. 3I, no, L.
Also,
Yeah, 3L.
similar to Ms. Edwards, you also had a discussion related to Mr. Jediah Haney. And And he also applied for a couple different boards and commissions. We reach out to him, and he's interested in have the time to serve in 2 boards. So this item is for you to consider appointing him to the Thurston County Fair Board for the term of January 8th, 2020 to January 8th, 2022.
Okay, way to go, Jedediah. Anything?
No.
Anything? 3M.
You also discussed the reappointment of Dr. Burton Gutman as the Commissioner District 2 representing in the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And this appointment will be for a 3-year term that will begin in January 2020 and will end in January 2023.
Okay. 3N, Nora. Central Services.
For your consideration, Commissioners, for you to accept the project, and this is related to the Public Office Defense Lobby remodel. You may, if you have visited their office, they have done a nice remodel. They have increased security to their staff. The project was completed and done in the summer months. As the contract goes along, there's always a little bit of a punch list items that need to be taken care of. All that has been met. All the contractor has met all the requirements related to the contract and the specifications, and it just requires your action to accept the project and close the contract.
I have to go and take a look at it. I was there just prior to the beginning of the construction, and it sorely needed something for protection. Anything? Good. 3O. CPED.
Here's the other appointment for Mr. Jediah Haney to the Agricultural Advisory Committee. In this case, representing District 1 as a non-farmer member. And this is a 2-year appointment for your consideration that will begin January 14, 2020 to January 14, 2022.
Anything? Nope. Very nice. 3P.
For your consideration, Commissioners, this is a request from Superior Court to reclassify a position from a staff attorney, also as a pro-term commissioner, to a law clerk. This is a current vacant position. They have been trying to hire this position since July 2019, and they have not been successful. So Superior Court has put in the position to reassess the needs of Superior Court, and they have concluded what they need at this point is a law clerk position to better serve the commissioners and the judges at this point. This particular action will result in a reduction of us on the budget from $8,447, that's the top level of the staff attorney, to $6,098 a month. That will be the top level of the law clerk. That will be a reduction of $2,349 a month, or just about 39% decrease.
Okay. Anything?
So this is the second law clerk that we didn't authorize, essentially. They'd asked for 2, and we authorized 1. And now they're going to transfer another position over to a...
Yeah, it well may be. So this is a vacant position, and based on their needs, they have assessed this and requesting for you to consider this reclassification.
Does it seem odd to you, though? It does to me. That's not my my world. That they would have difficulty finding a pro tem commissioner and staff attorney, but it'd be easier to find a law clerk.
I don't know.
Huh. Anything? That's a good move.
My seat, mate.
Suits their needs. That's a good move.
So, Commissioner, I'm not suggesting that perhaps it's going to be easier to find a law clerk.
Well, no, I get that, yeah.
So
but that's addressing their current concern or need.
What I believe is they have gone through the process is what actually they need, and the law clerk is what they need the most.
But was that unstaffed because somebody recently quit, or because they'd have trouble filling it?
Well, based on the description that I received, the initial they had the staff attorney, court commissioner to be filled, but difficulty finding the right person, I believe, which they put them in the position to reassess what is it that they need. The result of that assessment, they concluded perhaps the law clerk will provide much better services to the existing structure.
Okay. And finally, 3Q. The financial services, our voucher list. I've gone through them. Any questions or issues?
Yep, I've gone through.
Wow, takes us to department items. Number 4, agenda item, CPED, the County Heritage Grant Awards.
Yeah, you reviewed this item last week, Commissioners, and this is for your final consideration to award the Heritage Grant Historic. As a result of the Historic Commission going through the review of the applications during the grant process. You may recall there was a phase 1 and phase 2. During the phase 1 of the grant applications, which closed August 30, 2019, they received 5 applications, just about with a total cost of $30,000. We have a budget of $75,000. At that point, before you award the contracts, those grants on those phase 1 applicants, you ask staff to go out and go through another grant application process, which that one ended on November 4, 2019. So for your consideration today is for to award 9 applications out of the 10 received. And that will have a total cost of $73,282. The recommended recipients of those grants are the City of Lacey, the Lacey Museum, Olympia Historical Society and Bigelow House Museum, Olympia Tumwater Foundation, Sandman Foundation, Window Seat Media, South Thurston County Historical Society, Northwest Playwright Alliance, City of Tenino, and City of Tumwater. The Commission recommended not to award only one request, and that is from the Olympia Arts Heritage Alliance. And Jeremy is here to answer any questions, I believe. Yeah, right here.
No, I've
Yeah.
gone through this a couple times.
Good. You skated. 4B, contract amendment with TRPC.
You also reviewed this item, Commissioners. As you may recall, we have a contract in local agreement with the Thurston Regional Planning Council, TRPC, where they provide the chief clerk services for the Boundary Review Board. And the Boundary Review Board is the body in which they review any potential annexations that may be coming as requests from the different cities. In 2019, we did have a significant amount of effort in some of the proposed annexations, which resulted in a higher amount in 2018, which you amended halfway through the year as well. This proposal is for you to consider extending the contract in 2020 with a maximum cost of $20,000 in this contract. And again, this is a maximum amount, and this is not a one-time, given the whole $20,000 to TRPC is a fee for service, depending on the number of annexations that we may receive and depending on the level of effort they may have to go through. As far as work, believe that perhaps there is in the works maybe 4 annexations that may be coming to the county for your consideration. So then this fund will cover their assistance.
Okay. Anything?
What was the amount last year?
It was $20,000 last year, right?
It's just under 20,000.
Yeah, just about.
Okay.
Have you anything on that? Okay. Agenda item number 5, the Sheriff's Office request for electronic commissary.
Yeah, it's a request from the Sheriff's Office for you to authorize to go for a request for proposals, RFP, for an electronic commissary services in the Thurston County Corrections Facility. At this point, all that transaction with the inmates related to the usage of the commissary is done by hand in a paper trail. So this really is going to help on processing those requests and streamlining the process by far, and perhaps eliminated some errors along the way.
Okay. Commissioner? Any
Good.
comments? I'm okay too.
And the sheriff's office will come back after they've received their proposals and for the board to consider approving the vendor that might be selected.
Okay. And then agenda item number 6, we talk about our board and work sessions and such, and then we wrap it up and move into the Board of Health. I'll turn that over to the chair.
Okay.
And we have 2 packets, one thick one and one regular
Yeah,
one.
what's the,
Let's go with the thick.
You have a complete packet. in
Go with
front
the
of
thick
you
packet?
Today. Yes.
okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Shelley Slaughter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services and Administrator of your Board of Health. And with me is...
Lydia Hodgkinson, Clerk of the Board of Health.
Lydia.
Okay, great. We will call this meeting to order, presumably at 3:30, assuming we're done with our other meeting. There'll be a approval of the agenda, approval of meeting minutes from December 10th, or a motion as such. And then presentations and proclamations. First item, 2020 election of officers for the Board of Health.
And yes, this will be just ratifying the action you took at your Board of County Commissioners meeting, appointing Commissioner Menzer as Chair of the Board of Health and Commissioner Hutchings as Vice Chair of the Board of Health for the year 2020.
All good on that? Yeah. Okay, next item under the same heading is appoint Board of Health Administrative Officer.
So yes, this was a matter we discussed last time, and you last saw this item 2 years ago. And one administrative change we made to this item after our meeting last week is to include the appointment stay in effect until revoked by the board, so that this won't be an action that you will have to do every year. But according to RCW 7005-040, you have the option to appoint an administrative officer, and you've elected to do so in the past. And so this continues that action, which includes my duties to the Board of Health, as well as supervision of the health officer, except for duties defined by the legislature and statute.
Questions on this item?
I don't know.
Okay, straightforward. The third item is a proclamation, January Blood Donor Month.
Yes, so this is our proclamation this month. January is Blood Donor Month, and this is a really important time to share with members of the public the importance of blood donations. Oftentimes in the wintertime, blood banks run short, and there's a high demand for blood. We recently had a very successful blood drive at Lily Road last week, with donors saving 24 lives with the donations that they have done. So we want to highlight the importance to the community, and we will have guests here to accept this proclamation from Northwest Blood Works, and that will be led by Jennifer McCoy. She is the manager and donor recruiter representative, and she'll be accompanied by Brandy Green and James Moore, who will provide more information on blood donation and the work of Blood Works Northwest.
Okay. Good.
No, I'll reserve it for later.
Okay.
That question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Public will have an opportunity to address the board. And then we move to these 2 report items. 4 and 5 is the health officer's report, which, Shelley, you'll be sort of...
Yes, I will be giving that on behalf of our health officers that are acting on behalf of Thurston County, and items that I will cover will include things such as flu activity and surveillance, masking, hepatitis A, and a few other updates related to our communicable disease activities and groups.
What's your vision for the hiring process for our new health officer?
Really great question. I'm really happy to report that we have 9 applicants, and we did an initial review of minimum qualifications of the applicants yesterday, have identified some top candidates, and we'll be working with Human Resources to coordinate with your schedules to do a panel of interviews, which will include a first round staff panel followed by a panel that consists of yourselves and whoever else you identify, because this is a really important appointment that you have. So really optimistic about the candidates that we have. And just one other note that I'll share. When I gave you the list of acting health officers last week, Seattle-King County did have a change with one of their physicians that's been assigned to support our tuberculosis program. It previously was Dr. Chris Spitters, and now we're really happy to have the support and expertise of Dr. Masa Narita, who's been working with our staff on our active tuberculosis cases.
Thank you.
Very nice.
And then it'll go stay with you for health officer's report, and that'll, anything we need to talk about in this setting?
No, I'm just going to give a high-level overview of some of our department activities and successes and some
I'm sorry,
events
director's
coming
report
up.
is what I
Yeah,
meant.
director's report, that's okay. I knew what you meant. Then we'll be moving on to the next item.
Okay, any questions for Shelley?
No.
Okay, department items starts with homeless presentation on point-in-time count. Keely Marino, who is in the room, but I don't know who's presenting that, or,
Keely will be presenting that item, and if you have additional questions that you haven't heard already in your briefing this morning from her, we're happy to answer that. But she's just going to provide high-level overview of the point-in-time count and request the volunteers that we need to make this a successful event.
good on that?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. The next department item, under number 7 on the agenda, is 2020 Social Services and Public Health Legislative Priorities. Art Starry listed as contact for this item.
Yes, and if Art could please join me up here at the table. Art is our person in our department who's been designated to be our legislative representative. He is co-chair of the Washington State Association of Local Public Health Officials Legislative Committee, and he is going to be presenting on the various agenda priorities of the membership organizations that we support at Public Health. And last week, you requested additional information. We provided that for you. Hopefully, you've had a chance to review that, and Art's here to entertain any questions that you have.
Questions on legislative priorities?
It's the Wasalfo stuff, right? Those agenda items?
Yeah, so this is Art Starry, and as Shelley indicated, I'm the Environmental Health Director for Public Health and Social Services, or Division Director. And so it's a kind of a little bit of a complicated thing. So the Washington State Association of Local Public Health Officials, the local health thing that actually I guess I'm now the chair, my co-chair left. But they're an affiliate of the Association of Counties, and so is the ACHS. That's an affiliate of the Association of Counties. And so what we end up trying to do is work.
What is the ACHS? That's the Association of County Human Services, right?
Human Services. And so each year, we try to establish what our priorities are and also be prepared to try to respond to legislation that comes forward. And because the Association of Counties, the commissioners are our bosses, we have to work to make sure that we're aligned with both their priorities, and that if something special comes up, that we're not doing something contrary to what might be a priority for the counties. And sometimes that comes up where there'll be there's this great funding opportunity, but it's actually would take away from the ability of the counties to do some of their core services. So we have to try to work out those details. So what I provided were the different legislative priorities for the different groups, just to let you know the sorts of things that they may be asking us to respond to or partner with them on. And if you look at those, you'll see that it's not surprising, one of the big things for the Public Health Association is to deal with funding. Last session, the legislature was kind enough to provide some funding for us, but that's the good news. The bad news was that they tied it to a tax on vaping products. And so the revenue from that is a result of they misestimated how much it was, and then on top of that, with the recent ban on flavored vaping products and things, that's declined revenue even more. So there's a request to try to make up that difference. And there's a variety of other things that are being proposed or that are priorities, such as working on homelessness, the opioid issues, trying to actually take that Board of Health vaping ban and enact it into some sort of legislation. There's other things that are coming up as well. And of course, the big cloud that's on the horizon that no one knows quite what it's going to do is the impact of the initiative on the car tabs. The legislature is going to have to figure out what they're going to do about that. Are they going to honor the intent of the initiative, or are they going to try to come up with some other funding? No one knows. And so that, of course, is a big dollar sign, and it has the potential to impact a whole bunch of other things. And so that's something we'll be watching on. And I could go on and on and on, but one of the things that we get to do is look at a whole bunch of bills and try to decide if they're important or not. And sometimes we get asked to testify on them, and if we do, then we talk to Ramiro or send an email to Ramiro and work through Shelley to see that it's something that's appropriate, and let you know what let him, and ultimately he can check with you if need be to see if it's something that's appropriate, and then we can sometimes go and testify. I've gotten to do that a few times.
Questions for Art?
No, good.
Art, are you glad there's only...
kind of a long answer, sorry.
Are you glad there's only 59 days left?
We hope there's only 59 days. It would be really nice if things are organized enough to end in 59 days.
On car tab 976 money, is there some health thing that's directly funded by that money, or is it more just the domino effect?
It's kind of the domino effect, because what I've seen in the past is when the legislature needs to find funding for stuff, they often take money from things that you wouldn't think they would take money from. And so that's the potential and then just kind of the mentality of the legislature. If you start raising revenue in one place, you may not be tempted to raise it in others. So it can be the domino or the bow wave effect, I guess, whatever analogy you'd like to make.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you.
I think we got that item.
There's,
Thank you for Patrick's thing in case.
oh yes, please. And there's just two other legislative items that I did want to just draw your attention to, and that's under the Association of County Human Services. There's two items there. One is House Bill 1406, establishing an administrative cap. As you know, we've had many discussions here with the board and with the Regional Housing Council on 1406, which provides us an opportunity for additional revenue for affordable housing and to respond to homelessness. However, there is no administrative funding included in that. So this is a request for that to be added. And then also, Representative Beth Dolio has introduced a bill, House Bill 1590, that allows a local option for sales tax for affordable housing and behavioral health to be councilmatic. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that, because I thought that may be an important one that you would be interested in following.
So when I heard about this particular, and maybe this is a new version, but the version of it I heard was sort of like permanent supportive housing in the home fund, kind of an equivalent. But it sounds like maybe it's broader than that, than just constructing and managing a permanent supportive housing. If it's as broad as behavioral health treatment programs, and is it broader than that, or is that just a way of sort of targeting supportive housing?
I don't have the latest version of the full text of this bill, and I'm happy to.
That's the 6126
Yeah.
No,
for the councilmatic, or
HB 1590.
Yeah, it,
Local option sales tax for affordable housing / behavioral health programs to be
Oh,
councilmatic.
I'm looking at the Senate bill, companion bill 6126.
6216, okay.
so we can definitely get you more information on that or tack on to another agenda setting if that's an appropriate time to kind of go into more detail as a session unfolds or we have more information on that. I know that behavioral health has been a major focus, and you see that reflected in several of the different priorities amongst different organizations that we participate in. And so I don't have the answer on specifically what that behavioral health addition includes in that.
Okay.
I can
Perhaps
probably give you
Ramiro, that's
that. I
great.
have a copy of that bill under section I3IB. It states the affordable housing and facilities provided housing-related programs, as stated in the previous section, may only be provided to persons within any of the following population groups whose income is at or below 60% of the median income of the county imposing this tax. Persons with, and strike out mental illness and adds behavioral health disabilities. That's a new proposed language on the bill. And remains who is eligible for this based on the 60%, which includes veterans, senior citizens, homeless or at risk of being homeless, families with children, and accompanied homeless youth and youth adults, persons with disabilities, domestic violence survivors. And it also says the remainder of the monies collected under this section must be used for the operations, delivery, or evaluation of mental and behavioral health treatment programs and services or housing-related services. So those are the key changes on the bill.
Thank you, Ramiro.
I have a question on
Well,
that.
that was going to be part of my report.
Sorry.
Commissioner Hutchings.
It's nice that Representative Dolio is putting forth HB 1590, allowing us the taxing authority to go out and for a homeless tax. And I see that there's a big appetite for that within the municipalities. I don't see the appetite in the county for it, but it's a nice option to have. But regarding the 300 million, I believe it is, that the governor put in his budget for housing, any idea? It's real premature. Any idea how that's going to be distributed?
I don't have that information yet, and Keely, you may have more because she was instrumental to the development of that. But I believe that funding is specifically to address unsheltered populations by increasing shelter capacity throughout the state.
She's gone.
She's not here anymore, but she can provide that information at her next
Okay.
her next update with you.
All right.
She's
And I asked
been
that
following
yesterday
that
at the
closely.
CIP, and she wasn't aware, just too premature. I didn't know if you had any further information on it. Okay.
No, there's a lot going on, a lot to track, but we're paying attention and trying to keep abreast of the changes, and we'll keep you informed as well.
All right, thank you.
CIP is still an operative acronym?
It is until June 30.
Okay.
Yep.
Good to know. All right, so back to the agenda. We are at item 8, solid waste compliance successes.
Yes, so this is our final presentation, and since I have Art at the table, and he is the director of this program, then he can provide you a little bit more information on what this presentation will entail.
Yes, this is Art again, and just so Patrick Soderberg and Mark Koster, who are on our solid waste program, Patrick's the supervisor, and Mark is kind of the star, I guess, of solid waste compliance in Thurston County. I'll be giving a presentation on what happens as far as when we receive complaints and how we try to resolve solid waste complaints with some examples. And so they'll briefly go over again, how someone can get in touch with us, what sort of information we need, and then provide some examples of some cases where we've been successful. And some statistics, real brief statistics on just the number of complaints we get and how many we're able to resolve in a year. And there, if you've had a chance to look at the pictures, and it took us a while to get them to you, so I apologize that it didn't happen sooner. It's our fault, not Lydia's. There's some pretty dramatic stuff, and I mean, talking literally thousands of pounds of stuff that gets hauled off of sites as a result of compliance actions. And so we just wanted to show you that and show that we work, it's a kind of a thankless job, and it is something that our staff are good at, and just wanted to tell you about it.
And last week, the commissioners asked if you can put yourself on the agenda for the next walk.
Yeah, so I'll talk to the powers that be down at the Solid Waste Advisory
Okay.
Committee and see if we can get on that agenda. I know they've got quite a few things going on now, so maybe it won't be next month, but we'll shoot for as soon as we can.
Anybody?
I'm okay.
I have a question. Have you met Mark McElroy?
I met him very briefly at the last Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting, so it's good to meet him, and it's good there's the new program managers on board, so they've got a lot of things that they're working on, and that we would be very happy for them to resolve, so.
Ah, good, good.
To
Good,
resolve,
thank you.
right?
We haven't heard much about LP Brown School and
I haven't
lately.
heard much about that, and not much on that, and that's, anyways,
You have an
we aren't
update?
talking about that one in particular, like
Okay.
in this presentation.
All right.
But if you have questions about it, I'm sure Patrick and Mark can, if we're involved with it, they know.
Okay. I'll check in on that separately. Okay. Next item is Board of Health.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Art.
Thank you, Art.
Board of Health members related health activities and adjournment. 5 o'clock.
Nice.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Lydia.
That takes us to proclamations and awards. La Bonita.
Good morning, La Bonita Bomar, Clerk of the Board. The proclamations have already been reviewed. The only two that I have at this time is for today. I am working on others for the year, and I will be bringing those back to you on close to the 28th for you to review for February. Under boards and commissions, the Agritourism Advisory Committee has 3 vacancies. In your packet, you will see 2 applications, one from Nathan Allen and Barbara Anaya.
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 Okay,
I don't know.
thank you
Yeah, Barbara.
for your review. And so staff of that committee is recommending appointment of those 2.
What was the last part?
Staff of the committee is recommending appointment of either one or both
Okay.
of those applicants.
Commissioners, any thoughts on these applicants?
Good.
Yeah, we've seen their applications for a while now.
Yes,
I'm good. That's fine.
You're good with appointing them?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll put them on for the 28th.
thank you.
The Fair Board has the application from Jan Gillingham. Their committee won't be meeting until the end of January to review that application. Would like to hold off until they've had a chance to review it and go through their process for reviewing applications.
Okay, so we're going to hold on that one again.
Yes.
That's been pending for several months now, maybe 3.
Well, part of it was because of the holiday, but, oh, she didn't put her date down. I'd have to look back on my
Okay,
paperwork.
but that matters not, thank you.
On the Agriculture Advisory Committee, the same issue, Thomas Watson, staff has not had a meeting to review his application. They will be meeting later this month as a full committee to review the application. So if we could
Okay.
hold off until I receive information back, that would be
Thank you.
appreciated.
All right,
That's good.
That's all that I have at this time.
great. Thank you, Lot.
So I'm sorry, did we agree to Ms. Gillingham?
Not at this
No.
time. We're going to wait
Oh, that's
until-
right, because we're going to wait for the committee.
for them to review the application.
Got it. I just spaced on that.
And let's go, before break, let's go to PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Dominique with Public Information Office. Just a few quick updates. On January 28th, we'll be hosting one of our, the first off-site Commissioners meeting out at the Washington Farm Bureau on Carpenter Road at 5:30 PM, so that'll be an evening meeting. The board will be finalizing that agenda the morning before, so Monday, January 27th. The commissioners also had a roundtable discussion on Friday at TC Media. That will be the first episode of our Thurston County Connection series for 2020, and that will be coming out the first week in February. That conversation went really well, runs about 30 minutes, so I encourage everyone at home to take a look when it comes out. And then Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor, will be bringing forward a PIO year-end review, basically summary of everything we did in 2019 for the board's review. And she also has the updated homepage numbers for how many people viewed the homepage last year. So look forward to seeing that at our next agenda setting meeting. And any updates or any questions is all I have.
Any questions?
No, sir.
Any questions? No. Friday went real well. I was happy with that.
Oh, good, I'm glad.
All right, thank you, Brian.
I was hoping to attend the taping on Friday. I did, but unfortunately you guys were so efficient, they were done and gone at the time that I was there. So when I walked in, I said, where are the commissioners? So
That's funny, you actually showed up?
I did.
That's funny. We followed the school board, or the school district superintendents. They got done with their taping.
Okay.
That was nice. How long or lengthy is your legislative update or your county manager report? Lengthy? Let's take a break then. It's 10, we'll call it 10:10. 10-minute break, please. 10 minutes, and we'll be right back.
I didn't want to show you this.
Back at 10:21.
This is yours.
Those are both mine. Yours are in yours.
Oh, okay, I thought one of them was, okay.
All right, welcome back. It is still January 14, 2020, and we're continuing on with the work session. And next on the agenda is the legislative update and the county manager report.
Yeah, Commissioner is going to walk you through this report. But before I get to that point, I just received an email of a bill that will be for consideration this afternoon, has a hearing in effect. That's Senate Bill 6273. So this Bill 73 states that creates an exemption.
Is this the one you just received?
Yeah, so
Okay.
and this is not here.
Okay,
So-
so I don't have that you're referring
It
to.
should be included in your packet. My report is not included in your packet.
You have it? No, sir.
I don't think so.
Sorry, I apologize.
That's all right.
So I'll walk you through that,
Okay.
that report. In the meantime, this afternoon at 1:30, Senate Bill 6273 will be holding a hearing. This is a carryover bill from last year, and what it does is creates an exemption from shoreline substantial development permit requirements for a single-family residential protected marine bulkhead, subject to permit under the hydraulic code. Currently, construction activities related to bulkheads on bank protection structure are subject to various state environmental regulations. They may require environmental permits such as shoreline substantial development permits, as well as the hydraulic project permit, also known as an HPA. All those two permits are part of the Shoreline Management Act that was established in 1971 by the state. So what this bill proposes is to exempt, again, single-family residential projects that will like to build a bulkhead within the premise.
Thank you.
They will be exempt from those permits. And that is really the gist of this bill. This bill last year really didn't have any momentum behind it. And again, here's again. Is introduced by and supported by Senators Bundy Wedge, Warnick, Taco, and Mullet. And there's, as I recall last year when we were tracking this particular bill, is one thing is, I think the key element on this thing is the tribes needs to be part of that environmental permit process. And in exempting residential projects from this environmental permitting process, if it passes, may be challenged down the road. So, and that was one of the, I recall some of the conversations that occurred last year related to this bill. I'd just like to bring to your attention, and whether you like to support, sign in support this afternoon at the hearing, sign in opposition, or just remain neutral.
Go ahead.
Is this a bipartisan bill?
No, this is just a Senate bill. I didn't find any companion bill.
Bipartisan.
But is it bipartisan?
Bipartisan. I can tell
By the names.
by the names. I'm sorry.
Okay, I guess it sounds like this would be applicable to those citizens out at Lake St. Clair that were having bulkhead issues. I think there was about 6 or 8 of them because of the unusual high water that was damaging their property.
It could be applicable to them.
There were
Yes.
several people out there.
Yeah.
Could you at least find out for us if it's a bipartisan? I mean, it gives us an idea of how much energy to put into something.
Yeah, the hearing is this afternoon, so let me see if I can get that answer for you.
You have anything on that? Whether oppose, neutral, or support?
Based on just that, what I hear, I would oppose it. But there may be aspects of I wasn't thinking about what Commissioner Edwards just said. I was thinking about marine shorelines and how, we're, like, I sit on the Alliance for Healthy South Sound, where we're spending all of our money for the last 3 years. All the grant money that comes out of our organization has been put into a program trying to eliminate bulkheads along near-shore environments and work with landowners to not build them. And so the idea that, and we would exempt from environmental review, it just seems like we're just basically flushing all of our money and our other projects down the toilet. So that seems like a terrible idea, but if it were limited to, lakes and salmon bearing, and I can imagine a permutation of that might have some sense, but that on its surface of what you described does not make any sense to me.
By briefly reading the bill, I don't think it limits to lakes. I mean, as Commissioner Edwards could have an impact on those individuals, Lake St. Clair, but as I read the proposed bill, is all-inclusive.
I mean, the Steamboat Island Peninsula, for example, up and down, that's all it is single-family residences. Like, that is the whole shoreline. Right. So if you're just going to say we don't care about, and I sit on numerous environmental and water-related boards where bulkheads are a major problem for salmon rearing and for habitat along nearshore, which is our main salmon habitat environment in the South Sound. So yeah, I would be opposing that without more information.
Go ahead.
I guess shy any other information, I am concerned about those individuals out at Lake St. Clair, and I just use that as an example because we spent a couple years on that particular topic, and I know past boards did as well, and one of the big issues was protecting the properties of those individuals because the lake level seemed to continue to rise at no fault of mankind. It was just Mother Nature at work. So although I'm concerned about the environmental issues as well, I'm inclined to be supportive of it, but I don't want to get involved in something that's just going to be over there spinning its wheels. And that's why I'd like to know if there isn't some bipartisan support and if it has a chance to survive.
I already sent that question to the bride.
Yeah, or spinning its wheels, or because the state must be aware of I would imagine, millions of dollars going into the bulkhead issue, as Commissioner Mentzer's talking about, to eliminate them. I can't see why this would, I don't understand it's diametrically opposed. So I just need more information as well.
Sometimes these bills have nuances that are not as, so I would tend, my inclination would be to say neutral, frankly, because I'd want to read, this is an important issue, and I'd want to research it more deeply to come in one morning and give me a paragraph and say whether I think that's good law or bad law. That's
and yeah, but just and that was going to be my suggestion.
Pretty
considering
impossible.
the 130 hearing, just to remain neutral at this point to see how the hearing goes, to see if it has any legs through the process, and then we can do additional research as to perhaps the impacts, so you can have a much better information.
I'm comfortable with that.
Good, thank you.
If you're going to oppose, though, it's better to get out on that as early as possible. So being neutral today, if you do decide this is a bill that you want to oppose, you want to get that out there.
Okay. So to get more information, then we'll take a stand.
Right.
I'll take a look at it myself if I can. What are the numbers?
Yeah,
Amira?
Senate Bill 6273.
6273.
Okay, great.
Carryover from last year.
Yes, and that's why it's already have a hearing today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty, go right ahead.
So now go through this report. Some of those bills were already discussed last week in House Bill 2230 and Companion Bill Senate Bill 6080 modifies House Bill 1287. And this is related to property owned by federal recognized tribes, related to the exceptions if they have economic development plans. So if a tribe owns in fee any particular property, the House Bill passed in 1984 to the 1287 allows those properties, if they can justify this for economic development purpose, they will be exempt for property taxes. Within that context, it put this, sideboards on this bill. One, those properties, they were owned after March 1st, 2014. And also, this bill ends at the end of 2022. Also, this bill requested the JLARC, which is the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee, to do a study on the impact of this bill to the local jurisdictions. The bill that has been introduced already, that will be House Bill 2230 and Senate Bill 6080, removes the sideboards. It remains the same, but removes properties that were acquired by the tribes after March 1st, 2014, and removes the deadline of 2022. WASAC has weighed in a little bit on this, and there's a little bit of confusion as to why this bill was introduced, perhaps too premature, because the JLARC report is not done, and that report needs to be done by December 2020 of this year. So there's a little bit of the disconnect related to this bill.
Relative to that, at the WASAC steering committee, legislative steering committee, we talked about this bill, and though it says they give the target date of March 1st, 2014 as properties since then, it also, the way it's written, says properties before then.
That's the proposed bill. It eliminates the sideboards, yeah.
Completely, right. And so showing neutral here, this is our legislative, it says neutral. This is not
No, this is
WASAC.
my suggestion to you.
This is your suggestion,
My
okay.
suggestion.
Because it seemed WASAC was opposing it.
I don't think they have taken a stand on that, as far as I know.
I'll have to go back and see, but you may be right. Okay. Got it. So these are your recommendations?
Yeah, these are my recommendations for
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you.
We already touched base on House Bill, next one, 1598, that's related to annexations. And my suggestion is for you to support that. And the annexations bill is something that we have been working for the last 2 years on this bill. And at this point, the proposed bill, the proposed language, it has feedback from some of the key stakeholders, included the city of Lacey, I believe. So what it does is really puts into the context that we need to have in a local agreement before any annexation can move forward. And there's a lot of requirements within that interlocal agreement, and how we notify to the public, and how a legislative authority, you could approve that interlocal agreement, which is by ordinance, as proposed in this bill.
If you have any input on any of these bills as we go along, just jump in.
Okay.
And then my suggestion for you is to support this bill. Next is House Bill 2282. That has already been pre-filed, and this is related to create a grant program converting unused public buildings to housing for homeless individuals. And this is a grant the Department of Commerce will be managing, and there will be a availability for all the local jurisdictions to apply for this if we have any facility that can be remodeled for homeless persons. There is a little caveat on this bill. The Commissary County applying for this public building conversion grants must submit an inventory of unused public buildings to the department by April 1st, 2020. And I don't know how that could happen. To remain eligible for public building conversion grants, counties must update and resubmit the inventory to the department on a quarterly basis. So that is very burdensome. So that is what caught my eye, this particular bill. Although on the surface may be okay, I suggest the support, but I think I'm changing on this one. My recommendation to you.
Go ahead.
I do have a comment on this. My concern is that if we don't put any criteria in place on this type of a bill, and we allow everybody to move in from New York or
wherever they may have come from, I think it creates a big problem for our communities. So I would be inclined to support something like this if it was for local citizens that could truly be identified as local citizens that have fallen on hard times. I would be inclined to support that use of public buildings, but I'm not willing to support if we're going to encourage folks to come from all over the United States to come here because we're making it a little easier for them.
And this bill creates the opportunity for a grant. Doesn't mean we have to apply, doesn't mean we have to report.
We would not be eligible.
There you go.
The bill clearly states only counties with a population of 100,000 or less are eligible to apply
For what?
to this new grant, for the public building conversion grant.
And it
So
should be
the bill would
1,000 or
establish.
fewer.
It doesn't apply
not
to us
less,
at all then.
or fewer.
I'm sorry,
Then it
what?
doesn't apply to us at all.
Correct, that's what I'm saying.
We're saying that little counties should be able to do this.
That's what this bill is saying.
And they don't have to do it if they don't want to. They can just
Right.
not be eligible.
Yeah,
or
it's
not
it's
apply.
just an option. Yeah, it's
Right,
just an
it would
option.
be an option for small counties.
Can I ask this question? When we go down here, like I know last year we spent a lot of time the first 60. That was 90 days last year. It'd be 60 this year, but going through support. But I mean, what does it mean? Like, what if we voted to support every bill? Do you send a letter? Do you send an email?
No,
Do you call?
what I have
does
is
that mean?
Deborah Manguia. She will give that direction. If there's a hearing, she will sign in support. If there's a
Okay.
hearing, she will
She
sign
can
in
sign on our
opposition.
behalf,
Yeah,
essentially?
on your behalf.
Find what else to
Thurston
go with
County.
it.
That is the key. Is
Okay.
for her to have an understanding if this is of a bill of a great concern to you, how you would like to exercise that support or not.
And then she rallies us to go with her, perhaps,
Yeah.
or testify.
So in having that perspective to her, whenever she comes across any particular bill that you like to support, she will be right along the way supporting the effort.
Okay, understood.
So if at any point we do check in and say we support this bill, we, neutral with concerns is an option, that information's collected by legislative staff and governor's staff. And when reports are written about this, it's noted,
Who is-
X many in support.
31 counties supported. or-
Exactly, that
Okay.
kind of thing. So it becomes part of the record.
Okay.
So that grant program doesn't apply to us, it's 100,000 population.
Population of 100,000 or less.
And so I'm in support of that. It gives the smaller communities an option.
Okay?
Yep, that's good.
I'm not in support of it if it does not restrict those individuals that may apply and take use of this. I do not want to encourage people coming from all over the United States to come to Washington because we're pretty benevolent here.
Based on my read of the bill, it doesn't have any provisions related to prohibiting.
Non-discriminatory is my guess, or non-prejudicial. Okay.
So is that 2-1, I assume? Yeah, thank you. The next bill, 6134, that is related to concerning state reimbursement for election costs. This has been pre-filed by Senator Hunt and Senator Ziegler. Sorry. It requires the state to reimburse the prorated share of the state election costs to counties for primary and general elections on even number years, and that's key. Because at this point, we have reimbursed for uneven years of elections. And the county auditor, Mary Hull, has been working so hard behind the scenes and making sure this bill is introduced. So my suggestion to you is to support this bill because it's part of your legislative agenda.
2 thumbs up on that.
The next bill is 5270, and that is related to dates and timelines associated with the operations of the state primary elections. This bill moves the primary election date to the third Tuesday in May, moves the candidate filing period to the third week in March, so it moves the whole schedule to Tuesday in May, as opposed to, I think, the primary is in August right now. And I believe the county auditors are supportive of this bill, and I suggest for you to do the same. And they have a public hearing tomorrow, January 15th. So if you're okay, I will send Deborah a support statement. Any questions on that? Okay. Next bill is House Bill 2275, and this concerning certain illegal discharges of sewage water into Puget Sound. When I read this bill, it's really predicated on some of the sewer spillage that has occurred up in King County in 2019. And this legislation, what it does is it puts a fee to those illicit discharges similar to oil spills. So they equate, we have a very hefty oil spills, regulation in Puget Sound. This type of sewage spill will also be the same as the oil spills. And they're also in the process of developing a chart as to how those fees and penalties should be implemented. It doesn't really affect the county, but perhaps could affect LOT, since the county is a member of LOT. At this point, my suggestion will be to remain neutral, because it really doesn't have any effect.
So applying that here locally, then the state, if that was implemented or passed, then the state would go after the owners of the brewery, or would they eventually go after the city? Or would it stop right at the building owner? Because the spill into Puget
So this
Sound?
is as I understand, is purely related to sewage spill.
Just sewage.
So if in 2019, 2 wastewater treatment plants up in King County
Right.
failed. So in this case, it will not go back to the source. It will go back to the jurisdiction who's managing the wastewater
The
utility.
wastewater, right, okay. But it wasn't any kind of spill, it's just sewage?
Just
as the bill
sewage.
reads?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess we did have one incident last year that I'm aware of, and one in 18 that I'm aware of. One of them was on Percival Creek, in which we have no idea how many gallons of raw sewage went right into Capitol Lake, thus into the Puget Sound. That was from up by the college.
Yeah, it was a.
And the other was a pumping station that went haywire over by Tumwater at some point. So I don't know how applicable this would be.
Yeah,
but
it will be
I think it's a move to try and hold municipalities somewhat accountable, because right now they just pretty much say, oh, well. I wouldn't mind knowing a little more about this at some point.
Yeah,
Or where that money's gonna
this
go.
is House Bill 2275. And at this point, I don't have a date, whether it will have a hearing or not.
Make a note for me to check in with Lana.
The next bill that I have for you, which you already discussed with Shelley, is Senate Bill 6126 and companion bill House Bill 1590, allowing local sales tax for affordable housing to be imposed by a councilmatic authority. That will be you.
Councilmatic, right? All of our things today say Councilmanic. Here.
Oh, it does say council
on the
man.
Board of Health.
Boy, that's
And somewhere that's an
Freudian
error that's
slip.
gotten cut and pasted.
The cut and paste out, yeah, thank you.
On various documents. And I was like, wait a minute, am I crazy?
It's councilmatic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The
thank
public
you.
will think
No
we're maniacs
councilmanic.
if we
Yeah.
approve all that.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what was intended.
Yeah, maybe it's just,
That's
yeah,
funny.
somebody made an error, it's just cut and
A
paste.
subliminal
Yeah,
suggestion there.
probably not. The next
True.
bill for you is the 2206. And this is an interesting bill that I think it requires a little more detail. It's concerning equity by authorizing services outside of the urban growth areas. And there's a very hefty bill, and one item that caught my attention it appears to give the cities authority to expand the urban services into the rural areas. And that is embedded on a small section of this bill that I came across. So that seems to be, WASAC seems to be problematic at this point. That allows the city, on the surface, it appears to be good to expand services in rural areas. But in this citation, it will allow the cities to go beyond the municipal boundaries and beyond the UGA into rural areas, which, based on what I'm hearing, a sewer district can go into the rural areas, which may create a conflict with the GMA anyways. So,
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I'd like to see a sewer be able to go into the more unincorporated areas to protect groundwater, if that's the intent of that. And I guess, I don't know, my question would be, what would be the harm if a bus service went out a little farther? So, again, I'd like to know just a little more about that.
yep. So,
What services exactly
Yeah.
we're talking about?
and really, if you get a hold of this bill, outlines a lot of services. And the section that I highlighted, section 4, as the cities may extend or expand urban governmental services into rural areas, but are not required to do so. So they're given the flexibility to extend those services. And the services outlined in here, there's a lot of description. And again, I can go through this, but
You mentioned a sewer district, for example. Are you
that could be.
What does it
Because
mention?
that's a city service.
But it
because-
itemizes services?
Yeah, it does have that option in here.
Because right now, we would have a constraint of setting up a sewer district outside the UGA, but this bill would say that you could do that.
It states cities, no counties.
Oh, cities, okay.
So this is House Bill 2206. It has been pre-filed.
All right.
Substitute Bill 1591. This is an old bill from last year. It has come to the surface. It has been sent to the House Appropriation. And what this bill does is makes into law the Martin versus Boise opinion related to homeless and homelessness. So what it does is putting into a state law, not necessarily related to a federal, because I think that's under appeal, I believe, Martin versus Boise. So put into the state statute that no local jurisdiction can displace homeless individuals if we don't give them an alternative as to where they're going to be housed. So we're living in that reality. This bill, what it does, puts into state law.
And so where the courts stopped and won't hear this on review going up the ladder in the court system, this codifies all those issues that Boise, Martin versus Boise didn't address.
Right.
And I know WASAC is in opposition to this.
Right. WASAC is in opposition.
Yeah.
I haven't. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just for the sake of discussion, I would be concerned that, say, public buildings, you no longer can ask people to leave to close up a public building, using this area for an example. I can't abide by that because it would be too disruptive to government to operate under those kind of restrictions if you had no leeway to clear a building out.
So let me read the definition of public space. Means any property that is owned or leased in whole or in part by any state or local government entity or any property upon which there is an easement for public use and that is held open to the public, including but not limited to plazas, courtyards, parking lots, sidewalks, public transportation facilities and services, rooms or areas within the public buildings, but only to the extent that the rooms or areas are generally held open to the public, and only during normal hours of operation. And then as to shopping centers, but only those which serve as a functional equivalent of downtown areas under the Washington Constitution. And that is the definition of public space.
I'm inclined to follow what the state association is recommending.
When you say, so there's two big questions to me, because this is going, if it does what you say it does, it's going quite far beyond Martin versus Boise.
Yeah.
Martin versus Boise just said you couldn't criminally prosecute. Didn't say you couldn't displace someone or set parameters on where. It just said you could not proceed with a criminal prosecution if there was lack of alternative, and the alternative, according to the court decision, had to be indoor sleeping arrangement. So there was what is alternative, which was, was actually defined by Boise, but the displacement, this issue of displacement is completely not part of Martin versus Boise, because the issue of can you close up one camp if you have another camp? Well, another camp's not an alternative. It's not a indoor sleeping arrangement, but it's not prosecuting anyone for trespassing or whatnot. If you just fence up the camp and say, hey, here's the camp you can go to. So kind of seeing how all of those scenarios would fit into this law is something that I'm going to have to do before I could take a position myself, one way or the other.
So and again, it's Senate House Bill 1591.
Okay.
So are we going to oppose that, or?
My suggestion is neutral at this point. And if you have time, I can do additional research, or if you like to read the bill itself and give me your perspective. I will bring this bill again next week.
All right.
But you're our legislative rep at the State Association of Counties, and you're advising, they're taking an opposing point of view on this, is that right?
Yep. Discuss the next one. I'm going to go verify that.
My vote will be neutral, but you cannot vote me, obviously.
And the last bill that I have for you today is Senate Bill 5457 and House Bill 1571. That seems to be a bill that may bring value to the county, which requires all the bid documents for public works over $1 million to include specific subcontractors. And then we have right now in the bidding process of those big projects, we have the main contractor who submits the bill, and they just add how they're going to perform the work with the subcontractors without naming them in the contract in the bidding process. This bill, what it does is ask them or requires them to submit the specific name of the companies who's going to be providing the subcontracting activities on public works projects above $1 million.
So it's just another layer of bureaucratic restrictions on private enterprise to be able to do their job?
I think, from my point of view, it creates transparency to local governments to understand who is going to do the work. That's my assessment of the bill.
I see that as another regulatory oversight, I guess, by government, creating another layer of bureaucracy to make it more difficult, more expensive for contractors to get the job done for the public. So initially, without any more information, I would be inclined to be opposed to that.
Uh, 54, 57?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Wasack is in opposition of that as well. And I did confirm 1591, the Martin versus Boise, that similar one. They're in opposition to that as well. So I agree, I'm in opposition. If Wasak's opposing it, then I would oppose it.
As well.
Okay.
I'm very curious why Wasac is opposing 5457.
They were concerned with liability to the individual if all the other subcontractors on down the line have done it right and completely. They were concerned with the liability being assigned to one person.
Oh, it's got a liability clause.
There's a liability piece to it.
Because even today, when we're contracting for a public work, we have to know the companies that are doing the work so that we have adequate reporting to L&I.
Right, but
So-
this bill, that is bring that requirement as part of the bidding process from
Oh,
the
it's part
start.
of the bidding process, I see.
Right, so if any of the if all the
Liability thing.
subcontractors did not do anything right or completely, then it goes right back to liability to the individual.
I could see one other piece of that problem would be that a midterm project, and then all of a sudden, somebody goes out of business or says they can't do it. Okay, then what happens as far as bringing in different subcontractors? So I just see it as a
Negotiate the bid.
roadblock to efficiencies.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Since we have the luxury of a former Public Works Director as our county manager, I'd be inclined to follow your suggestion, although I don't really know enough about it. I'm not enough an expert in this field to know, so I guess I would definitely not oppose, but I would, at this point, have to vote to stay neutral. I need to know a little more about it.
And I can't remember Jane with Wasac, what her, they have several staff members that are attorneys, and several of the attorneys spoke to these bills, but I don't remember if Jane is an attorney or not.
So when we have and it's just my perspective, perhaps the reason as to why I suggest to support this bill, in complex projects about $1 million, when we don't know until and we don't have developed to say A or nay, when a sub is provided after the award was given to the main contractor. Because complex projects, there is a lot of sub they have in the specific set of skills that provide the specific services. At least from the start, we'll know, any local jurisdictions will know what those sub contractors will be right off the bat and make a logical assessment of those. And sometimes when the project doesn't go correctly, usually is because of a subcontractor performance. And that's just my perspective.
I guess just for a point of clarification on this, I'd just mention that I don't believe we're allowed to use the history of past poor performance
No.
when we're making selections, and I think that's about as dumb as it gets myself. So here we're going to put another restriction on, but yet we can't even use their past poor performance as an evaluation issue.
So
But
we hire
at
them
least
again.
but at least
Kinda forced into it.
but at least the jurisdiction knows who is going to be performing the work.
Okay. I'm still in the same position.
Okay.
Me too.
And that concludes my legislative report, Commissioners.
Well, you were right. You said it'd be this long. Do you have any other update, though? County manager update? Is that it? Briefing, public hearing pending, decisions pending.
Can I just recap? I think you have, so I just for my notes, what the board's direction was on a couple of these.
Yeah.
Martin, Boise, the 2-to-1 vote to oppose it, am I right?
Yeah.
1591. The services outside the UGA one, did we have a direction for you on that? I asked to stay neutral, I think, till I got more information.
I think that's what I have is to remain neutral.
Remain neutral, okay. And then the one about sewer discharge, 2275, you say neutral, and I was going to look, is that where we're going to be neutral?
I believe that was on this, the direction has changed for me.
And then 6273, which was the one you started with, related to the bulkheads.
Yeah. And I think that one is
Neutral at this point,
neutral.
and we can revisit it next week potentially. Okay.
And 2282, House Bill 2282, creating grant program for converting unused public buildings.
That was 2-1 to
And
support.
2-1 support.
Yeah, that was, for information, position from WASAC was just they have concerns with it, like neutral, but they had concerns.
Okay, thank you.
This is fascinating stuff, to me anyway. Commissioner items, number 1 is the county workforce challenges discussion. I believe
Yeah.
we have some VIPs from HR.
That's right.
Good morning.
In this conversation with your HR director, commissioners, is more of the beginning, perhaps, of a series of conversations. And this is related to some of the challenges that we have in finding, really people who wants to come to work for the county. And we can probably give you recent examples. Robin's unit has some issues in terms of facility technicians. We see a little bit of issues with civil engineers. At least from my point of view, it's just the tip of the iceberg as to how we're going to be seeing the lack of recruitment because the workforce is retiring for the most part. Is going to be retiring a lot, not just in Thurston County, but in all the local jurisdictions. And we don't see the young workforce coming back in and start filling that in. There is some elements, the current economy may have an influence on that. That's cyclical. But I think is long term is what we're going to be facing this issue moving along. So, and Maria's here to walk you through some of the challenges that perhaps we have, and maybe some of the options that we may want to bring to the board later in terms of whether it's an incentive that we can implement. There's some models out there, whether employment incentive that we can probably bring to your attention and consideration. But again, this is just the beginning of this conversation.
So what you missed before you introduce yourselves was we talked earlier regarding Superior Court. They couldn't find someone to hire for a staff attorney / pro tem commissioner. So they're changing the pay and the title to suit their needs, but also hopefully to cast a wider dragnet to capture someone. So I can see this as being an issue.
Good morning, Maria Ponte, HR Director, and with me today is
Debbie Watson, HR Manager.
a lot of the challenges that we're seeing are really specifically connected to the low unemployment rate. It's around 3.5% last I heard. So there are fewer people looking for work, and that just creates challenges, not just for us here in Thurston County, but it's nationwide. I've checked with my counterpart at Kitsap County, and they're experiencing the same challenges with the same positions, civil engineers, and a lot of the technical, so wastewater treatment in those areas. And so as part of the HR initiative, it's to recruit and retain, and one of Debbie's projects is working on succession planning. We've done some preliminary work in looking at in-training programs. We're not quite there yet. As you know, HR's got a pretty full workload. We're doing the classification and compensation project, which also aligns with, are we describing our positions correctly? Do they have the right qualifications? What adjustments do we need to make towards that? Yeah, and so in talking to Ramiro, we're trying to identify, do we need to implement recruitment strategies such as possibly employee referrals, getting our employees to network with their people to bring us good candidates, connecting with the local colleges, so not just here in Thurston County, but north and south of us, some of the, like Bates Technical. So we're, preparing to get recruitment strategies in place. And I brought Debbie with me because she has a background in recruitment, and she's also done a lot of our executive recruitments. And one of the things she's done a really good job with is what we call finding passive candidates, so somebody that might not be looking for a job, but if presented with the right opportunity, might be willing to do that. And so just tapping into a lot of, and exploring those ideas. 5 years ago, we had more candidates than we had positions, and so now it's, back to supply and demand. There's a lot of demand and a short supply. Did you want to have any questions or anything to add, Ramiro?
And maybe you can probably hear from Robin some of the examples that we're facing right now. And for me, what I consider to be entry-level positions in the county, and yet we find some challenges within.
So currently in the facilities unit, I have 6 vacancies. The facilities manager and facilities tech 3, a facility tech 2, and 3 facility tech 1s. We've been running interview groups almost every week, and we've made 5 offers now, and all 5 have been turned down. And the reason we've asked every time, why? And in all of them, it's come back to that we're not offering enough money. These guys can make more in the private sector. And one of my vacancies is because a facility tech 1 left to go to the private sector, and he is now earning more than I do. The county obviously can't offer that kind of money. So when we're in the interviews now, we're asking the candidates, are you aware that this is the range, and are you willing to accept something within this range, a salary that's within this range? And they say yes, and 2 have then said no. So that's been frustrating. We're also emphasizing the benefits that the county can offer. And right now we're negotiating with a candidate for the Tech 2 position. She says that she may be interested if there are opportunities for leadership training. We can absolutely offer training and get her into the supervisory series at HR and offer to send her to the next cycle of the Lean Six Sigma training.
Yep.
And there are things that we are offering that we're trying to play up to attract people in. But so far we've had no luck in the last 2 months. And that is just killing my group. That's a full third of the positions in facilities that are vacant. So I've been meeting regularly with HR, and not just me, but Jason Ash, who's currently in the lead, and Jetty, who's our admin person in central services. We've met 3 times with HR. We're following all the best practice tips that they've given us that we legally can. I've made a connection with a local tech school who are graduating people in this field. We've been talking about changing the minimum requirements, so we substitute training from an accredited institution for experience, and exploring a possibility to train on the job. But even training on the job, I have to have enough higher level technicians to train the beginning level technicians. So we've been using every strategy. We're offering higher than minimum salaries with Ramiro's permission. And in every case, we've been told no. So we need some new strategies that we can use.
I'm going to guess that you're doing this anyway, but I'm just going to bring a little bit of my history. About 12 or 15 years ago, it was the same thing, even as it today, trying to hire law enforcement. And so what I kind of put forth was, if we're looking for someone, for a police officer, that is customer service oriented, that can make decisions and deal with potentially angry or hostile people, and or is bonded and can be trustworthy around evidence and such, and in people's homes, let's start targeting financial institutions. We have bank tellers and credit unions, those types of personnel. And if you want someone that with good customer service skills that will do anything they can to work with the customer, target hospitality, target the wait staff, just target these people. Olympia actually brought in several people from, you wouldn't even believe what kind of backgrounds they had who were coming into the law enforcement. So I don't know what kind of outreach that we're doing. I'm presuming that it's just huge. I'm hoping it is, not just on the website for government jobs or something. But I don't know what kind of outreach we're doing. But if you target certain groups that normally wouldn't go to the county website looking for a job, that might help.
We're advertising in the trade journals. We're reaching out with assistance to JBLM. We're
Good.
any avenue that's been suggested to us. About the only thing that we haven't been doing, and if we're not successful in this next round of candidates, is paying for advertising on sites like monster.com or the big catch-all. But part of the challenge with those kinds of advertisements is you start to attract a lot of people who are not qualified.
Yeah.
We get a certain number of people already who are not qualified, who are looking for government employment. But when you go on the big sites like that, you start to attract a lot of people who are not qualified. So it's a balancing act. Then, you pay to be on them, but you then have to spend more time with the
You
filters.
pay to weed them out, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
We're in a recovery that's been going on for, probably 10 years, a good recovery. In my past life as a law enforcement executive, we oftentimes faced this problem as a cycle.
Yes, you have.
And I found that spending the most time up at our military installations gave us the best reward as far as getting at people that we could utilize. And I just wonder if I want to be cautious about bumping the wage structure up too much, because this cycle is going to break pretty quick, and then you're going to have more applicants than you can utilize. I would like to take a look at the possibility, and maybe you've already done this, of bonus type activity, but spread over time, so that they just couldn't sign up for the bonus, get the job, and then leave. They have to stick around for X amount of time.
Yeah.
But they don't even get all their money initially up front. They have to show that they're good at what they're applying for and such. So I think it's just a sign of the times. This is not unique. I see the fast food industry is looking at bumping managerial positions up around $100,000 right now, because they need some good managers. So it's a challenge for any employment sector, I think. So
It is.
I just want to be cautious that we don't overcompensate and then we're stuck with that farther
agree.
down the road.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Sometimes the easy solution is, well, we're not paying enough, let's pay them more. But then if you overinflate it, then you're stuck with that.
Yeah.
So I do believe in the market and having our salary set within that market. But we can look at possibly one time, like a recruitment bonus or employee referral or relocation costs, something that is just
Yeah.
defined and it's over without overpaying employees, because that's problematic. And it's widespread, because then where do you stop? Because everybody else wants a piece of that pie.
Right, and that's the downside of incentives. I agree that we don't want to raise our salary ranges outside the market, the government market. We should stay in line with our comparables. So that's not one of the things that we've talked about. But what we did discuss a little bit were the signing incentives. And the downside of a signing incentive is the people who have been here a while and stayed loyal to the county, what kind of incentive are they getting for being here and staying here? And so how do you address that? And how do you address, do they quit and then come back and get a bonus? It becomes, again, there's a balancing act in what we do. And then we talked about a bonus for employees who refer a friend. Well, what if their friend isn't qualified? Or what if, you select one person's friend and not this guy's friend? They all have things that we need to work out. But I think that there are real possibilities, and Maria and her group are looking into them.
Yeah, and today is just to bring this issue to your attention. And we'll work with HR to come up with some options. You're right, raising the salaries, that usually is not sustainable. And at least from my point of view, we're comparable to in the job market as to what we compensate.
There's a few that need tweaking, like civil engineers, but for the most part, we're right there. And I think that is credited in part to doing COLAs, because that has helped us keep the pace, and those smaller jurisdictions that haven't done that fall way behind, and then they have to make substantial adjustments in order to get within market.
Right.
Maria? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Debbie.
I was just going to say, I also would encourage us to look at just long-term plans. While we have a 3% unemployment right now, we recognize with the population and the ages of people as they come into employment or they're retiring, what does that look like? And how can we be sure when we attract talent that we're going to retain them here, that they're not coming here for the work or the money and then leaving for something else? So what is it about us that makes us an employer of choice?
Right, and that's why we're stressing the benefits. What are the benefits that we offer the private sector doesn't?
Did you mention relocation costs?
Yeah,
Travel?
we were just throwing out ideas. So let's say somebody has that talent and technical expertise in facilities, but is east of the mountains. The relocation costs can be rather expensive, so can we do something towards that? And this is all brainstorming, because that's why we want to bring it to your attention, because at some point we may make recommendations that has a dollar attached to it. But we want to make sure to do our research and make sure it's sound, that we're not just doing it knee-jerk and then we don't really get any positive outcome or long-term employees from whatever we recommend.
You're right, it would be expensive to do the relocation costs, and you generally wouldn't be regionally like Pierce, King, or even Clark County. It's going to be, I was going further east of the mountains, like Wyoming or even Texas, where the pay scale is so low, that would entice someone to come out here, but it's going to be more expensive. And then how do you reimburse them over time to make sure they're going to be a good fit and they're going to work out and stay?
Yeah, there's a lot to be worked
Yeah.
out, because we want to be prudent in whatever measures we take that have a financial cost.
Yeah. Do you have anything?
I like the relocation because it seems to get around some of the problems Robin was talking about undercutting current employees.
Right.
You're like, oh, it's a special situation. They're coming from Texas. It doesn't feel like somebody's getting something that I should be getting,
Yeah.
like DirecTV, or something. It's like,
I hear it every day.
or Sprint.
No more parity. I
Half
want
your
the
bill.
same.
It's like, wait a minute, I've been with you for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Something brought Alaska down.
Right. We should, though, also
Anything
be
further?
looking at what are our longevity incentives. I think that that's one of the things that HR is working on, and if we're going to do recruitment incentives, we ought to also be thinking about that.
Retention, yes,
Yeah, retention.
recruitment and retention.
Because I have seen at other organizations where
Get close to it.
People, oh,
Thank you.
I have seen at other organizations where you bring people in and you pay them a higher salary, and over time, that does alter, I mean, the people that have been around for a long time start becoming disincentivized because they're getting paid less for working there 20 years than a person who's been there for a year who negotiated a higher salary. So we need to keep fairness in mind too.
That kicks on the seniority benefit.
I do also want to
Yeah.
just add that
For longevity.
we're never going to get around the fact that there will always be certain groups that fluctuate and will be hard to attract. And we just have to be able to focus on, you know, what can we do to attract them and, yeah, narrow down our strategy for that.
Well, thank you. That's uplifting.
So,
You've got work to do.
more to
If
come.
you know anyone who'd take a good facility tech that's looking for a job, please refer them to us. We're looking for.
And I would do it without a signing bonus.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank
A
you.
referral. Thank you very much, Maria and
Hey,
Betty.
we found somebody for the Historic Commission.
Yeah, there must
no
be
telling what we could
facility
do.
people out there, that's right. That's
Doing
right.
that and the Olympians helping.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Regional Fire District.
Yeah, I will ask Kurt Harding to come and provide us with an update. As you probably may be aware, there is an effort to look at the options to regionalize some of the fire services, and I believe it's between Tumwater, City of Olympia, East Olympia, and Fire District 3, Lacey. There has been some initial conversations on this particular proposal. Kurt has been attending those meetings, and he's here just to provide you with an update. At this point, it's not a decision that is required by the board, and perhaps the impact to the county may be more of a change in the operations.
Okay. Good morning. Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Services. I just want to provide an update on the regional fire study that was done. So the history of this is that the City of Tumwater contracted with Emergency Services International in November 2018, and their objective was to determine if a regional fire authority was feasible for 2 or more fire agencies that included Tumwater Fire Department, Olympia Fire Department, Lacey Fire District 3, East Olympia Fire District, West Thurston Regional Fire Authority, and McLean Black Lake Fire District. It's interesting to note that of the 6 fire agencies that they were initially considered in the study, there's only 12 fire agencies in the county, so that was 50% of the fire agencies they were looking at. They came back with the study released in November 2019. And the gaps that were in the study was, number one, financial information was at a very high level, macro level, and they also needed more detailed information, financial information from Medic One. Medic One was not part of this first phase of the study. Labor agreements were not considered or looked at. Again, that was not part of that phase of the study. And what they're looking at is if the process moves forward, these financial areas, the labor agreements, Medic One, financial information, these would be looked at during phase 2 if the fire agencies move forward. The consultant recommended when they released the study in November 2019 that 4 of the agencies, Lacey Fire District 3, Olympia Fire Department, Tumwater Fire Department, and East Olympia Fire Department, or Correction District, move forward to form a planning committee on the feasibility of a consolidation discussion. McLean Black Lake and West Thurston Regional Fire Authority were not recommended at that point in time. So, impact to Medic One, if the Regional Fire Authority were to take place tomorrow, the impacts to Medic One would be little to no impact because Medic One would be providing a resources from the Medic One fund based on dispatches and a number of EMS response calls, so that would not change. Whether it's 4 agencies or 1 agency, it would still be the same number of response calls across the county. So one of the things that they were looking at out of this process and the immediate steps to go forward is, and also note, any process to form a regional fire authority would require a ballot measure in all the affected fire agencies. So it would have to have a vote of the people. The impact of people living in these fire agencies and districts and departments, it's too soon to assess. The detailed financial assessment is required, and that will probably determine if the RFA moves forward. because what they have to look at is, one, if it maintains, increases, or decreases the level of service for the residents there, and then also if the taxes go up, remain the same, or go down as a result of the regional fire authority. So it's too soon to determine any of those answers. The immediate next steps, the 4 fire agencies and Medic One are communicating the information with their boards and or city councils to determine if they should move forward and create a regionalization planning committee. The timeline for that is mid-April. So that's part of what I'm doing right now, is giving you the information for consideration. The study consultant is available to present the study to individual boards or councils at a cost to the county. In other words, you can ask the county, the consultant to come in. The consultant could do a presentation based on what the perspective is from towards the county's participation in this. However, since Medic One information was very limited in the initial phase of this study, I'd recommend against doing that because the consultant doesn't have a lot of Medic One information. The time frame again to reconvene and look at this is mid-April for a decision on establishing a planning committee by the 4 fire agencies and Medic One. So my recommendation at this point is to maintain a wait-and-see posture on the regionalization process pending further information, to participate with Medic One and the regionalization planning committee if the fire agencies move forward, and to provide regular updates to the Board of County Commissioners as needed. One note, since the EMS Council did not have a meeting in December due to the holidays, they don't have any of this information. So I will be presenting some of this information tomorrow and a more detailed report for them at their February meeting. So if you're going to ask if the EMS Council has made a recommendation, they have not, because they don't have the information.
I've got questions. I've got questions, but I'll turn to my seatmates. Question?
Kurt, I was at the presentation at the Olympia City Council, and has there been meetings then following up since then?
There was a January 2nd meeting with Olympia Fire Department, Tumwater Fire Department, and Lacey Fire District 3, along with Medic One, and that was where the decision was made to go back, provide information to their city councils and their boards, and then reassess in the middle of April as to whether or not there was the will to go forward with a planning committee.
Perfect, that's what I want to know.
I just want to be clear, in mid-April, the committee's reconvening, or the planning committee? What's happening in mid-April?
Mid-April, the 4 fire agencies will come back and determine whether or not they have the will to move forward and form a planning committee. Right now, there is no planning committee. And my recommendation is to have Medic One, if there is a planning committee formed, and the county's invited to have Medic One participate in that planning committee.
Okay. And the final question is, are you getting pushback from any individual agency?
Not at this point in time, but they did know that they needed to have, give the information to their board and or city councils, because while there was representation from all 4 agencies, all the boards and city council members may not have had all the information. So that's the reason going back, briefing them, and determining whether or not each agency wants to move forward.
Very interesting. Okay. Because that's been talked about for a long time. And it sounds like there are initial steps getting towards that end. We've talked about regional policing as well for decades. That went nowhere. Or regional government. Okay.
Or regional jail.
Regional jail. Little mini steps. All right. Nothing, Gary?
No,
okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kurt. Appreciate it.
Number 3, Thurston County Economic Development Manager.
Yeah. I would like to every so often to have Jenica Machado come and give you an update on some of the economic development efforts that she will be pursuing. So this is just the beginning of the series, and she's here to walk you through this spreadsheet, not necessarily in all the detail. I'm not expecting you to go through, nor she's going to go through line item by line item, but just give you in a sense some of the efforts that she has done so far, and how we're going to be moving next.
And this is perfect timing for the OMB presentation tomorrow. They want to know where we're going economically.
Perfect. Well, good morning. As Ramiro had said, I'll go over the economic development strategy with you. With this document, I tried to incorporate the goals, objectives, and strategies.
Did you say your name? I don't think you did, Jenica.
Jenica Machado, Economic Development Manager. So with this document, I incorporated goals, objectives, and strategies from various plans, including the county's strategic plan, the Thurston Economic Alliance strategic plan, and the Thurston Thrive strategy maps, as well as information obtained during internal meetings and external meetings. And so some of the external meetings that influenced some of the content in this would be with Thurston EDC, Pack Mountain, the Olympia Master Builders, Experience Olympia and Beyond, and the Thurston County Chamber of Commerce. And so with many exceptional partners in our community that are also engaged in economic development work, I really want to preface this document in recognizing that excellent work, and that this strategy map is meant to highlight the county's role and looks for opportunities to align, complement, and support and not duplicate the efforts of our partners. Some of the high-level categories regarding the role of the county in our community's economic development work include local tax, land use policy, permitting, infrastructure readiness and placemaking, strategic investment support, targeted initiatives, and jurisdiction-specific recruitment and retention. When looking over this document, at the backside, there's a couple notes denoting the smiley face means qualitative data. And then the focus area, the geographic focus areas are Grand Mound and Rochester, and the constraints would include staff capacity, me, and funding. And so when looking over this document, it starts with vision on the left and then kind of drills down through goals and objectives and strategies with indicators for checkpoints in the short, medium, and long term, with the objectives being 1 to 2 years, goals 5, and then vision 10 years. There will be a phase 2 for this document where I'll break down the strategies into an annual action plan, which gets a lot more detailed into how the activities will be implemented. And so that's going over the who, what, when, why for the activities. And so I won't read it as there is quite a bit on here, but do you have any questions, preliminary questions, taking a glance at it?
Go ahead if you do.
Well, I don't know if I have questions other than maybe comments. I don't see that the county can be successful to continue to provide services to the community if we don't have more retail outlet. I mean, whether that's even the ability to maintain this courthouse or another courthouse probably hinges on that particular topic. And that has really been stymied in this county in the past. So I think retail outlet has to be the bigger push, and I think we need to look at the regulatory restrictions that are in place that prevent that. I'm aware of several locations right now that are businesses that are wishing to expand, and we're talking in the millions of dollars. And the regulatory restrictions that we seem to put in place are overwhelming to those entities. So then they might make a choice to go elsewhere, for an example. So I think, to me, that's got to be the big push. Economics and schools are the main drivers to me for a good community.
The businesses you're talking about, you were in contact with CPED about those businesses and
Some.
what needs to be done? Oh, good.
But some of it is regulatory stuff
Yeah.
that they're stuck with, policies from the past, you might say.
Yeah. Do you have anything? We need a minute.
Well, I could respond to, I guess, Commissioner Edwards' comments. I mean, you say a lot about retail, but I guess my question is always, what does that look like? Where? Because if we're putting additional retail, if we're encouraging additional retail in the urban growth area boundaries, then that will be just annexed at some point by the cities. If we're putting retail in the unincorporated county, there's growth management issues, and it's not just regulatory, there's policy reasons not to do that. Creating sprawl and creating environmental problems and creating additional poverty. It's a domino effect of doing that, creating infrastructure we can't afford to build. So my opinion is the county's financial health cannot be predicated on expansion of retail. We got to look deeper than that, which is why I'm glad our number one legislative priority for this year is asking the legislature to rethink county financing and give us more tools, structure it differently, stop unfunded mandates, fund public defense. We're 49th in the nation in support for our court systems, for example, at the state level. These are the things that really will give county finances a bedrock foundation. Now, not to say this is off topic, but not to say that we shouldn't be looking to expand economic development in Thurston County. We should do all the things that you're talking about. I just don't see that as the answer to our county financing struggles necessarily. It's one piece, but there's got to be a lot of other pieces there. But I like what you've done here. I know you and I had a meeting and we talked about kind of how you were going to approach this position and come up with objectives and then measurables. And it looks like you have a great start here. So I'll look at this further and follow up with you if I have questions. Looks like a good starting point for what we've hired you to do.
I guess maybe from my perspective, to answer to me, your first question was the where. I think we can follow the Growth Management Act. The where usually is within the urban growth area. And a good example of that is Pierce County. If you look at Parkland and Spanaway and on out to the Mountain Highway where they've got, the larger box stores and a lot of retail, you still have it condensed into those. Yes, they're going to be probably annexed at some point in time, but I think that has to be part of the plan. And incrementally, I think that can take place. But until those annexations take place, it gives the county some revenue source to provide services. When the Growth Management Act was put in place in the early 90s, there was always the intent of phase 2. But those individuals that put it in place went by the wayside before they got phase 2 accomplished, and that was supposedly going to be addressed under the Ruckle House study, but it didn't get as much attention, in my estimation, as it should have, because the population bases do generally live in those urban growth areas, and so that's where they're catering to. We're not able to meet our mandate of open spaces and restrictive sprawl, if you will, if we don't have resources to address those. So I think it's a total package, but right now, as a base of revenue, retail is a big piece of that, and we could get down into the micro sections of our local economy. The sales tax breakdown of 15% versus 85%.
Yep.
If the retail is in the county, then the 100% goes to the county to make that all work. If it's in the municipality, then 85% goes to that municipality and 15% goes. And I don't think that breakdown was ever adequate. So until we get to where we need to get things fixed, I really think retail is the only advantage that we've got right now. And when we've got a business that is already in existence and we can let them expand from a $1 million business to a $3 million business in exactly the same spot, protect the environment, I think that's what we should be moving forward with.
So I'm convinced, based on our meeting a couple weeks ago, that Jenica is going to be recruiting and wining and dining entrepreneurial businesses, organizations into our county, and research and development into our county, white-collar type researchers, even researchers, medical type stuff as well, in addition to bringing perhaps retail, like getting an auto mall business into the county, if the auto mall is starting to very slowly break away, and hotels. We need to somehow get some hoteliers into our county, into the county area. That all helps too. It all takes time. But I'm convinced you're doing something to that end.
Well, so moving forward, this document and some of these efforts will be deepened as I kind of continue into this role and will be more robust and comprehensive. And so just a couple notes on projects that I will have, that I'll be working on in the short term is evaluating the feasibility to develop an available property and land inventory list. I'll be meeting with business owners from Rochester to Nino and some other businesses on the Bountiful Byway, as well as attending the Rochester Chamber meeting and study meetings. And I'm currently connecting with the Conservation Fund and Department of Fish and Wildlife to hopefully bring a training program here on balancing nature and commerce in rural communities.
Anything else for Jenica?
I guess just as one, maybe to pay attention, one other issue of economic development is we don't have any say about tribal activities on tribal land that becomes trust land, as far as I know, and we get no revenue from that. But it is what it is, so let's try to work within that system as the best we can. And so when we do have a location, and I'll just use the Great Wolf Lodge as an example, we've got a pretty good economic draw to that particular location, and it's going to be there regardless. So I think we need to continue to try and expand in those locations where we have sewer service, for an example, and it reduces the cost for all those people that are participating in that particular sewer district. The more people we get on there and the quicker we get them on there. And it's built for a certain capacity, and we ought to be going out to reach that capacity or beyond if we can do it through additions. But again, develop that retail, and that's in an unincorporated area that we have no real control over, so let's maximize our benefit from that.
Any further?
No, all good comments.
Yep.
And again, Jenica is going to come every so often to give an update. And along the way, if you have a project or a constituent who would like to expand, give us that information, because Jenica is also there to facilitate some of those businesses. So
you're welcome.
If you'll come see me, and as soon as we get a break, I'll give you a couple examples and maybe talk about them.
Let's get it connected.
Thank you.
All right.
Municipal bonds.
Yeah, this is a continuation of the initial conversation that Robin had with you.
Thank you.
Related to, I think this, yeah.
So this is related to the financing of our large IT systems. So what you'll see in this document is a background on the reserve fund, the system replacements we're planning for this year, and how we plan to pay for those. The large system reserve fund was created in 2017. In 2016, we'd hired a consultant, ZCO, and we referred to it as ZIG, the ZIG study. And the consultant came in and did a comprehensive review of our large IT systems, including making recommendations on when we should be replacing those systems. Based on that study, they also did, the consultant, they made estimates on how much the replacements would cost. And the board at that time established a large system IT reserve so that we could start to save up money to be able to replace the systems. If you fast forward to today, what we're finding is that the estimates in the study were woefully under what things are currently costing, to a very large degree. And when Dennis and Brian and I talked about this issue, and they're here to be part of this conversation, what we found is the prices are over 3 years old, and the technology has evolved. And one example of that is that at the time the study was done, an assumption was made that we would be purchasing systems that would be managed by county staff on site or on premise. And we'd have them in our own servers, we'd be doing the work on the systems and providing all the support. Well, state of the art today is cloud technology. And what we're finding is that it costs more to put it in place and maybe a little less over time, but the implementation costs are quite a bit higher. So those are just two of the reasons. Time has passed and technology has evolved that the estimates are proving to be much too low. And the bottom line is that we don't have enough money in this large system reserve to purchase the systems that we need. This year, 2020, we're looking at replacing 2 of our major systems. And these are possibly 2 of the systems that are going to be the most expensive out of the entire plan. The first one is Amanda. It's our county's permitting system, and you know its deficiencies. It's beyond its useful life. It's not supporting modern technology or application techniques for permitting. The original estimate for Amanda was $313,000, but current market estimates are that it's really going to cost us $1.5 million to replace that system. So we have not been collecting anywhere close to enough money to replace Amanda, and it's desperately needed. Munis and Eden are the finance and payroll systems. They're at the end of useful life, and Tyler Technology owns both of those systems. They have been signaling for some time now that they will no longer support Eden, and if we don't have Eden, we don't have a payroll system. No one gets paid. And I don't think our county employees will continue to show up if they don't get a paycheck, as much as they love us. So it's important to replace those, and the financial system is old enough that offices and departments have developed a bunch of shadow systems. And those are systems where you do your work on whatever you've got handy, and then you somehow interface it with the official system. Well, that is not a good practice on a whole lot of levels. There's a lack of transparency, there's additional work involved, you're duplicating efforts, there's a lot of work just to make sure the systems reconcile, just all kinds of issues with shadow systems. The initial estimate to replace Munis and Eden was $1.4 million. And even at that price, it would have been one of the more costly systems. But this system is now estimated at $6.5 million, if not a little more, for overall replacement cost. And part of the reason that this costs so much more is the scope expanded. As we looked at the systems that are related to finance and payroll, we, as a committee, determined it would be much more efficient to replace systems like CAMS, asset management. We desperately need a grant and contract management system that we don't even have today. Those are part of financial systems in today's market. If we replace CAMS, we need to have a fleet management module. So the scope expanded on this and the price went up. So again, this is going to be the single most expensive software that the county has ever acquired. And we just don't have the money sitting in the bank to cover the cost. So we explored a lot of options. The first thing we looked at is, could we borrow from another county fund? And the reason that we can't do that is interfund loans must be short-term in nature, and by short-term, the state auditor says 2 years. 3 if you push your luck, but they want them to be 2 years or less, and we can't split. We need about $8 million now to replace these 2 systems. We can't afford $4 million a year any more than we can afford 8. So that was not a viable option. We went to the state treasurer because the state treasurer has a low interest loan program for local jurisdictions. So we turned there and we said, hey, we're going to need some money. And they said, yeah, we fund everything except IT. So that's not an option for us. Those were the 2 best alternatives that we had. I called our counsel at PFM and said, what other options are out there? And he said, your most viable option is to issue bonds. So what I am recommending to you is that we issue $8 million in bonds to pay for these 2 major systems this year. The payments would be not quite $1 million a year. We would offset those with what we're currently collecting, which is the offset. The offset is about $240,000 a year to offset that. So the increase for the payment would be $752,000 a year starting in 2021.
Is that offset by the large system reserve fund?
It's offset by the amount we're currently collecting because I'm sorry, I should have said this. The reserve fund is funded through rates to all county funds. So we bill out to the users and the money is collected into the reserve fund. So the theory was that the money would be there when we needed to buy the new system, but we haven't been collecting enough. We'd use the money that we already have collected for the replacement of these 3 systems, Amanda, Munis, Eden. That'll offset the initial purchase cost. But we'll still need to pay an additional, and then we'll take the rates that we're currently collecting, we'll continue to do that. But we need to add another $752,000. For Amanda, we would bill CPED, the permit fund, bless you. In public health, we'd bill the environmental health fund, and in public works, it's whoever does the permit work.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the permit work for public works. So those 3 funds would pay in to replace Amanda. For our ERP, our finance system, you'll hear more about that system in 2 weeks because we're right on the verge of selecting a vendor. The ERP is billed out to all county funds because every office and every department will use this system. About 65% comes from the general fund, so the increased cost to the general fund is going to be roughly $436,000 a year. So this is a big increase in cost that we need to be pulling into the large system reserve. But the last thing you'll see on this briefing paper is your real option here is either go and replace these systems and bond them, this is how we would pay for them, or don't replace them now. The downside is the technology. We need this new technology. But what I want to stress for you is we need to increase the amount that we're putting in the large system reserve, whether we bond and pay for these systems now or if we buy them later, because they cost what they cost. We'll never get them. We'll never replace Amanda for $300,000. It's never going to happen. And if you wait, it's going to cost more than the $1.5 million that we think it's going to cost today. So let's say we wait 5 years to replace Amanda, which is absolutely not a good idea. But if you did, you'd still need to increase the rates that CPED, Public Works, and Public Health are paying in, so that 5 years from now, we have sufficient money. If we wait for the ERP, we still need to increase those rates so that when you do buy it, we have enough money, and enough money then will probably be more than the $6.5 million we think we need today. So I'm asking for your permission to go forward with the bonds, knowing that it's going to be an increased cost, but these are going to increase costs whether we do bonds or not.
A quick question. You talked about the shadow systems that folks are doing now, creating something here, moving it here and here to here. Does that create liability or issues then regarding public disclosure?
Not
Trying to
public
find everything and where it went?
If we get any public disclosure requests, we usually, people pull out whatever they're using.
If we can find them.
It creates challenges with auditing, reporting actual costs, payroll. You tend to start to have to do journal entries, so you're moving things between accounts, and it just becomes
Cross-referencing,
extremely
okay.
messy. It's messy and time-consuming.
Yes, go ahead, Gary.
This sounds like every other financial deal we've been getting information on. I mean, whether it's the jail, it was going to cost this little bit, now it's going to cost 10 times that. So I guess I'm not against moving forward on something like this, but when you say ask for authority to do X, is that just to do the research, not necessarily to go out with the bonds and all that? Where are you drawing the line here?
We've done the research. This is a request, and I'm not asking for you to say yes today, but I would like an answer pretty quick here because we have to give the vendor an answer for the ERP. But I am asking for authority to go forward and prepare to issue the bonds.
Okay, if you talk about the bonds, I don't know, we're talking about, what, 47 cents or something for this courthouse issue. What will we have left as far as how much is it going to take away from that potential of $1.80?
Nothing. That would be within existing
Yep.
revenue.
And what about our ending fund balance? If we take $400,000 or something every year again from our ending fund balance, it makes it almost impossible to get ahead.
This would be the commitment on how to spend growing revenue in the future. And revenue is growing. Your property tax grows, your sales tax grows. I am asking you at this time to make a commitment that this would be included in a future budget, and it does impact what you'd have to spend on other things. But we have to replace these systems. And you're absolutely right. I acknowledge that it feels like every time I'm talking to you, it's about something that costs more than we thought it would a few years ago.
Okay, I just want to put a parallel here with what I talked about earlier, and that is that whole business about retail outlet, business growth, whatever you want to refer to it as. I'm going to refer back to Satina Equipment Company. They wanted to expand. Our own process held them up by over a year unnecessarily. And so now they finally did get to expand, so now we're going to reap a benefit from that, and that might help us to pay some of these issues by enhanced sales tax. But if we continue to put restrictions in front of these businesses that are trying to expand and do the best job they can without hurting the environment in the least, we're never going to get ahead of this. And that's why I want the priority placed on economic development, where it won't hurt the environment, but it will help our revenue. We just can't keep spending on new issues without having adequate revenue to come in.
And that is, if I may, that's an excellent point, Commissioner. Related to those two systems, the Amanda system, this is the system that really is going to bring us to the next level as to how we're going to be processing permits building permits in the county. Because at this point, you're right, we have a lot of citizens coming in during the normal interaction in here. And having the system, we can probably have all the submittals online. Then we can process all the reviews online without the citizens having to come and travel to the courthouse. So all that, the new system is going to provide us, along with the e-inspections, all consolidated into a single system. And that's what the current system doesn't allow us to expand on some of the vision that you as a board have, really, as to how we can streamline the permitting process.
Look at the time.
I don't have anything there. I'm not hearing that there's a choice to be made, really, so I guess I know what we're going to do.
Then I'm going to ask Dennis and or Brian, do you have anything to add?
Dennis Osorio, IT Director. The only other thing I'd say is right with what Robin and Romero were saying. Some of these systems that we're replacing, it's not necessarily apples to apples because there's so much more new technology that's in these systems. So you're getting them kind of mandatory. So like the permitting system, prime example, a new permitting system, you'd have a customer portal, you'd have a mobile app, all of that would be baked into it. So the services that we'd be able to provide with newer systems, it's almost what we don't know because we don't have it right now. But it's a full meal deal as opposed to what we currently have, and that could have been what some of the estimates were based off of, replacing exactly what we have, which the technology has came so far. And if we continue to go further, I mean, some of these systems are already 10, 15 years old, that gap's just going to continue to grow.
So do you need to get more information to come back to the board to ask, or do you want thumbs up now
I have
or down?
no additional information to give you other than my strategy to keep the administrative costs down would be to issue these bonds at the same time as we issue construction bonds for the expansion of the jail. If we do them at the same time, we'll have reduced administrative costs. And I've been talking to our bond counsel. It sounds like this fall we will have an opportunity to refund some of our current debt to bring the interest rates that we're currently paying down. So we would bundle all three of those things together, the system reserve, the jail expansion, and refunding current debt. And in that way, we may generate some significant savings that can help offset this cost.
Okay.
I will bring this item next Tuesday in the morning.
Yeah.
So,
To give you a little time to
give a
think
time to
about
think.
it.
Wow, okay. Thank you, thank you. Thank my seatmates. Now we're moving on to public testimony. Do you have public testimony to follow up on? Romero?
Yes, I do have a couple follow-ups on last week's public testimony you received. One was from Mr. Pettit. He was speaking about the courthouse project website. He alluded to the fact that perhaps that the website is promoting the vote of the ballot measure. That website has been vetted by the prosecuting attorney. And what the website has is factual information related to the actions the commission has taken related to this. There are copies to the ordinances, copies of the feasibility studies, and so I'm planning to respond on those terms.
Okay.
I would add that it's also been vetted by the PDC.
Yeah.
Good, okay.
And also you received public testimony from Ms. Joseph, Ms. Darius, and Ms.
Yes, thank you.
Flanagan. And that's related to the homelessness and encouraging the county to work at a regional basis. I will respond in terms of the Regional Housing Council as to how we are part of that council and how we're going to be finding strategies in the future to address the larger issue.
And just real briefly, have you had a chance to talk with Jay Burney about the messaging? People coming to the county asking for money for the city?
I did have the chance to talk to Keith Staley.
Or Keith, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. For the good of the order, anything?
I have one more.
Oh, go ahead. But wait. Don't order yet.
You received this morning a letter from Mr. Pettit. And I think he's planning to
That's-
testify on those terms.
Yeah. Over here.
And a copy. And he's asking a few questions and also a couple of questions related to the ballot measure and related to the voting and general obligation bonds. I think in a way we sort of answered this in the past. However, I did send this to Elizabeth and as well as bond counsel. I have received a response from my bond counsel related to his questions outlined in this letter. He also requests in this letter that we should be providing an answer today on his testimony. So let me do at break, at lunch, let me read the response from the bond counsel, follow up with Elizabeth. If I am in the position to provide a response this afternoon, I will do so. If not, I will do at a later date.
Perfect, thank you.
But we have already started looking into the questions or the issues that he raised on this letter.
Okay, anything further?
No, that's all I have for you.
I just want to remind the public, or the people watching at home, or wherever you're watching this, that there is no meeting on the 21st, next Tuesday. The next BoCC meeting will be on the 28th, and at 17:30 or 5:30 p.m. at the Washington Farm Bureau on Carpenter Road.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Anything final thoughts before we walk out?
Are we going to do commissioners' items at all?
No, it's almost 10 after noon. Got to be respectful of staff and lunch and such. All right, thank you. We're done.
Can't win them all, right?